Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll get started. While I provide some opening remarks and introductions, I invite you all to introduce yourself, where you're joining us from, and your role in the clinical research workforce. If you'd like to add that to the chat so we can get acquainted with one another, that would be awesome. Okay. So, good morning and welcome to the final symposium event of the Texas Clinical Research Workforce Series. Today's symposium is titled Strategies to Enhance the Health and Resilience of the Texas Clinical Research Workforce. My name is Dr. Carolyn Chang. I work at Texas State University and serve as the director for our Developing Hispanic Serving Institutions programs, including Generación STEM and Proyecto Excelencia. This year, I'm currently a faculty fellow with the Texas State Translational Health Research Center. I am very excited to kick off this final symposium event, which is a capstone to our summer series. It has been my pleasure throughout this summer and again today to be able to connect with you and with our guest speakers about this very important workforce sector. We are hosting this session from Texas State University, which is located in San Marcos and Round Rock, Texas, in the heart of the Texas Innovation Corridor. Texas State is a large, public, student-centered institution. It is a designated Hispanic serving and minority serving institution and offers over 200 degree programs spanning bachelor's, master's, and a growing number of doctoral degree programs. I will turn us over to Dr. Melinda Villagrán to introduce the Texas State Translational Health Research Center.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm really happy to join you this morning, and I appreciate you joining us today and joining Carolyn. This is such an important conversation. I mean, right now I am serving on a state task force.
Melinda, I'm having some trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Oh, does your headpiece your mic just need to slide down? If it's like mine, it does that.
Is that better?
That's
Yes.
perfect. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I'm thrilled that you're joining us today because I really believe this is an important issue, not only for where we are in Texas, but nationally with the shortages in the health and STEM workforce in general. The focus has really been on looking at ways to address certain professions. But we know that this is not a problem that is unique to any one profession, that it cuts across STEM and healthcare workforce preparation and needs. And so this group is really, to me, helping to think upstream about how we can really identify the knowledge and skills that are needed by this workforce, and then how we can overcome any bottlenecks and open the pipeline and all the phrases that I can use to describe address the problem in a way that will work for not only for our students that are entering these professions, but also for employers and those that need care in the healthcare environment. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Villagrán. So as I noted, this year I'm collaborating with the Translational Health Research Center as a part of their Faculty Fellows program. This collaboration features a project titled Fostering Health and Resiliency of the Life Sciences and Clinical Workforce of Texas, and includes the creation and implementation of a regional forum for collaboration, support, development, and conduct among the life sciences and clinical workforce leaders of Central Texas. My overarching goal is to find out where in Texas the clinical research professional workforce is in demand and where it needs to grow. This goal will help guide future program development, both academic and competitive. I'd like to take a note of a few session instructions before we move on. So please, if you are able to, have your camera turned on throughout our Q&A and town hall portions. When not speaking, please ensure your microphone is off. You are able to correct your name in the participant list so your Zoom square is accurate. And if you need any tech support, please use the chat feature to notify our IT support. And we've already done some introductions in the chat. Okay, so today we are here to have a forum and discuss strategies to enhance the clinical research workforce of Texas. Today, we will hear from guest speakers who lead initiatives related to workforce development and retention within clinical research and life sciences. And the goal for today, with y'all here today, will be to gain insights, make connections, and foster a continued dialogue that we can go forward with once we leave this forum to implement programs and develop strategies to nurture this workforce sector. We will have time after each speaker session for you to ask questions, make comments, and again at the end of the day in a town hall setting to discuss our next steps as a collective. We encourage you to stay engaged throughout the day and to connect with one another. Before we dive into our first speaker session, which should begin around 10:15, I would like to take a moment to thank the staff responsible for coordinating our series and also for supporting us today at this symposium. Particularly Shelby Sneed and Jessica Snyder and the Translational Health Research Center communication team have worked throughout the summer to ensure that all of these sessions are successful and run smoothly. And I'm very grateful for their support this summer and today. I would also like to thank the Translational Health Research Center under the direction of Dr. Melinda Villagran for providing me with the opportunity to explore this area of workforce development and make connections with y'all through support as a faculty fellow. And now I'm just going to make sure we'll go through the overview. I'm sorry. So we'll move through today. We have 4 guest speakers for y'all. We have Michaele Linden-Johnson, Harry Benson, Denise Snyder, and Lisa Shaw. The last session of today will be a town hall where we can have an open discussion, make some closing remarks, and have a plan to move forward with this forum. We've already been through our 3 series throughout the summer. We've addressed the current state of the clinical research workforce in Texas, the future demands of the clinical research workforce in Texas, and worker wellness and resiliency. And today we're coming together to discuss strategies. What are our action steps now that we've assessed the landscape? Our first speaker today will be Michaele Linden-Johnson. So now we will hear from Michaele Linden-Johnson, who serves as the Senior Director of Clinical Trials and Business Development for the Medical Center of the Americas Foundation, which aims to develop a life science ecosystem in West Texas and southern New Mexico. Thank you for joining us, Michaele. We are excited to hear about your novel programs addressing workforce and enrollment issues.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, so for just to tell you a little bit about me, I'm, again, as Carolyn said, the Senior Director of Clinical Trials and Business Development for a small nonprofit and located in El Paso, Texas, called the Medical Center of the Americas Foundation. Next slide. I'll be talking about workforce issues and enrollment innovations that we're seeing and we're having fairly good luck with in our region. Just to give you a brief background of our company, our nonprofit is there for community-wide benefit. Our role is to catalyze and develop an entire the bioeconomy for an entire geographic region, again, West Texas and southern New Mexico. I have a colleague that helps new young startups in our innovation center to commercialize their new technology, particularly those technologies that are in the bioeconomy space, pharma, med device, digital health, that kind of thing. We are also working hard to grow our region's bioeconomy talent pipeline and diversify the workforce. My particular role, however, is different from my colleagues in that I'm looking to help our region grow our clinical research, our clinical trial infrastructure. So we're looking to elevate care by bringing that clinical research to our region and make it more of a prevalent, prominent activity. And that hopefully will also elevate care, increase diverse representation in trials, and improve health equity. Next slide. So when I started at the MCA about 7 years ago, it was one of the questions we asked is, how do you grow a bioeconomy? How do you even do that? Are there business models that we can we can replicate, or that we can scale here in our region? And it's very clear there are actual business models. One of them is bringing capital. The other is helping build your facilities that will help your young startups bring their new technology to market, to create opportunity for spontaneous interactions amongst many different disciplines, because no one innovations today are not going to happen just in a vacuum. You're going to have to get help, bring teams of people together to find new ideas that have promise, that have good market product fit, and so there are these models out there that are working to help bring regions like El Paso that have maybe some might call them left behind, so to speak, not really able to capitalize on some of the newer industries. But one of the things that we're seeing is something a little bit different. While those are tried and true efforts to catalyze your economy, one of the things that we're seeing is that the local nonprofits may have a unique role to play in workforce development and in this new 21st century that is comprised of really rapid change. Next slide. So we're living in a new era where the pace of change is accelerated. So even if you're having trouble entering a workforce or entering a career with meaningful wages and good advancement opportunities, we're also seeing that even those groups that are employed are having trouble keeping up with upskilling, reskilling, that kind of thing. And it's even more than talent. It's more about also organizations, healthcare clinics, for example. How do they adapt to AI? How do they keep up with the latest decision support tools or remote care? There's a lot of things happening. So one of the ways that we envision nonprofits playing a unique role is being able to offer a much more comprehensive, community-wide, system-wide strategies for helping to address these unique issues that are present today. So our motto is that you can't just do the same thing and expect different results. That probably new solutions are sort of at play right at this moment for that are needed for all kinds of regions, particularly regions that may not have sophistications in clinical research and are looking to become more prominent players. Maybe that local nonprofit has a unique role to play in that. That's not to say that the academic institutions, the 2- and 4-year degrees at the academic institutions, the for-profit groups that are also offering training, and the company-based employer training, that's not to say that those are not important. They're absolutely critical. They're absolutely needed. But what we're seeing is that the nonprofit, the local nonprofit, like the MCA, might have a unique role to play in this next era. Next slide. So what kind of nonprofit am I talking about? I'm talking about a nonprofit that is local, that has an extensive relationship network already that they can leverage. These relationships are, trusted relationships that have maybe built over time with academic institutions, with industry. They're also nonprofits whose mission is maybe not so company focused; it's more community focused. For the MCA, for example, we win when our community wins. So we can often go into a healthcare clinic and seem a little bit more like a credible broker in that we're not there to sell the clinic anything. We're helping them navigate some choices that they may want to entertain. And so that helps us implement very comprehensive programs beyond just workforce and talent growth, and operate and play a different role than maybe a for-profit institution would or an academic institution. Some of the training that we can offer is very nimble, very adaptable. We also understand that ecosystems, as they mature, they need different things. For example, if you were to go out into the United States and look at where the competitive bioeconomy hubs are, you would see that Boston or San Diego, those are where the competitive hubs are. And they need different types of talent than our region needs. For example, we're looking to grow just the number of sites that conduct research in our region so we can increase access and increase our engine. Whereas Mass Bio or Boston is looking to grow their talent with regard to early talent that would go to work for like a sponsor, like a Merck or a Pfizer. But their economy or ecosystem is a very different level of maturity. So these nonprofits can act in sort of a nimble way, creating programs that are meeting the needs of their community at a given phase of their life cycle. And finally, the scope that we can offer is fairly broad. So we think that one of the keys to this new business model that may be replicable and scalable across the United States is that local nonprofit. And that's not to say that there can't be a national hub that's connected to these local players, but that's kind of what we're seeing. And we're also seeing that, a lot of, because we offer the training, almost anyone in our ecosystem can access it. It's not affiliated with education group. It's not, and it's tuition free. So the barriers to entry are low, and so we in a few minutes you'll see that we knew that eventually clinical research would show up in El Paso because we have 2 new medical schools, 2 new schools of nursing, a new school of pharmacy, a new school of dentistry, 2 new graduate schools of biomedical sciences. These all showed up in the last 20 years. So theoretically, clinical research would have shown up over time, and each of these academic institutions will have built their own academic 2- and 4-year degree programs and more of a clinical research engine. But our hope is that we're catalyzing that effort to come on board quicker than it would had we not been there. Next slide. So the other thing we asked is, another key question was, is there a framework for the model, the programs that we're looking to prop up to foster our local bioeconomy? And we adopted this framework. We're not, we're not saying this is the be in and end all, but it's working for us to view mature ecosystems through this lens. So to say that mature ecosystems have these core layers. They have infrastructure, they have networks, and they have intelligence layers and built into their ecosystem to help it function in a much more robust way. And for us, the infrastructure piece, you can break down the bioeconomy in multiple ways. Some might want to build their infrastructure for manufacturing, or some might want to build up their infrastructure for digital health or new material sciences. What we're looking at is building our infrastructure for the clinical research ecosystem. And that simply is growing our workforce, clinical research workforce, and growing the number of sites. We were not just wanting to train people and then have them leave. We knew that we needed to also, one key element here is jobs and keep retaining that talent locally. So we knew that one of our key programs needed to build that infrastructure but from a very broad lens. We also noticed that mature ecosystems, they operate more as a network. So you can also build many programs to foster your region's ecosystem, to act more as a network rather than separate siloed sort of systems. So we could essentially prop up a bunch of clinical research sites that were either freestanding or maybe a hybrid site that offered clinical research as a care option alongside the standard of care. But we didn't want them just to be operating alone. We wanted to provide a community-wide resource so that we could work more together to address patient needs in our community, and then thereby increase the entire network to function in a much more robust way. And then finally, intelligence. The intelligence layer has to do with, how well do you know your local patient population? What are the unique diseases that are prevalent? How do you build in programs to leverage that knowledge for community-wide good? Next slide. So I just went through our understanding of what mature bioeconomy looks like, the core layers you need to build, who the champions are that we believe that are helpful in catalyzing that process further forward. And now I want to talk to you about the specific programs that we've implemented and some of the results that we're seeing. So when you're talking about the programs that we've set up, they're really set up to grow the clinical research infrastructure and ecosystem for West Texas and Las Cruces, New Mexico. So if you were to drive across Texas, you would see that El Paso is somewhat isolated from the rest of Texas. And even though Texas is very, very prominent, a very prominent player in clinical research, you would see that El Paso has not been that prominent. And we're hoping that is all changing as we speak. But many people lacked access to trials and found it cost prohibitive and time prohibitive to access trials, because they would have essentially needed to fly to Phoenix or to Houston or Dallas or another area of east side of Texas to access those trials. Next slide. So here are the three. So I run again the clinical trial program associated with the MCA. And here are the three programs that we essentially built and implemented initially to help further along catalyze our prominence in the clinical research industry. The first was our Clinical Trial Academy. And the second was our clinical trial network. And we also offer our clinical trial briefings, which is basically a podcast that mostly was active around the time of COVID and was really, really helpful in driving trial opportunities to our region and helping our investigators meet sponsors through that podcast. But I'm not going to be talking to you about that briefings program today. Mostly want to focus on workforce and enrollment, and that would be our Clinical Trial Academy and our Clinical Trial Network. Next slide. So the programs that we've popped up so far and implemented, we've received funding from Bristol Myers Squibb, the city of El Paso, and the county of El Paso through an American Rescue Plan Act grant. And we have 7 partners that help us run these programs. It's quite a lot to manage, along with 12 instructors that have been doing nothing but clinical research for their entire careers that are acting as our instructors. Next slide. So I first want to go in depth about our Clinical Trial Academy so you have a good understanding of what this does. This program has been very, very successful. It's a partnership with the American College of Healthcare the American Association of Clinical Research Professionals, and ACRP is our partner. We license content from them, and but we provide the instruction via our 12 instructors, as I mentioned. There's 3 components to this program. One is our training. We train 3 different career pathways, and I'll tell you about that in a second. In addition to classroom training, we also offer on-the-job training through apprenticeships, and we do our best to let people know about internships when they become available. But we manage our apprenticeships through our partner in the region, Workforce Solutions Borderplex. And then finally, we offer startup and ongoing site support. So for our training, we offer mostly entry-level training to anyone wanting to enter the profession as a coordinator, a clinical research coordinator. We chose this. There's a number of different ways you can enter the clinical research profession. We chose this simply because this is what our ecosystem needed at the time, is this entry point into the profession. We also train physicians, dentists, advanced practitioners wanting to act as sub-Is. We offer an 8-month program. They're required to take 9 ACRP e-learning courses and attend the 8 sessions that are held one time a month for 1.5 hours. The new investigator training does not regurgitate what the physicians are expected to learn in the ACRP modules. Instead, it's supposed to be more about, okay, how do I set up a robust clinical research site and become study ready? We understand that this is like just a little taste of what they would be doing actually if they were to run trials, and we recommend strongly the investigators, along with the coordinators, that they get on-the-job experience before setting up their own site. And then finally, we train promotores or community health workers, not about how to conduct a trial per se, but how to be good patient navigators. We teach them about what is a trial, what's its impact on health and healthcare equity, how to find and search for trials. And then we give them tools to present the same information in the community so they can be community advocates. Our site startup effort is pretty minimal. Again, we recommend that it's a heavy lift to our clinics to set up their own sites. We recommend that they try first maybe shadowing or acting as a sub-I at an existing site before they decide whether to set up their own infrastructure, that they maybe look into partnering with existing sites, because that's often a quicker, faster, better, cheaper way to set up your site. But then there are many of our providers that still want to set up their sites. And for those groups, we offer some minimal site consulting. We have a consultant that goes into their clinic, looks at their clinic, does a gap analysis, and then gives the clinic some recommendations on what they would need to do to become study ready. We also have some SOP templates that we purchased from CenterWatch that our sites find useful as a template, and they know they need to customize those templates, but that gets them moving in the right direction. And then for our existing sites, we have a whole workforce that we're training. We're helping some of their employees get formal training, so we're shortening that onboarding process. We're funneling apprenticeship candidates, and we're paying for anyone. A lot of our sites have found that they like to host our CTA graduates as who are wanting to an apprenticeship at their site. They're finding that that's a win-win for them. And then we funnel clinical trial pipeline opportunities, list job opportunities to help support our existing sites. Next slide. All right, so for the clinical trial network, this was a newer program that was set up this last year. And this program, again, is looking to not grow our infrastructure per se, but grow the network layer of our ecosystem. And it simply was born out of this idea that in the pandemic, like if you had COVID, you would typically go to your doctor, and your doctor probably didn't know about the trials being run in the region, might have sent you home and asked you to go to an ER if you got worse. This is an effort to, just keep the conversation about trials more front and center, have more of an ongoing dialogue with the community about the benefits of trials, but it's also to equip what we call ambassadors or promotores and healthcare providers with just information at their fingertips about the trials being run in our region and how to quickly find the coordinators to contact should someone want more information. So the goal of this program is to increase trial awareness, trial engagement, and hopefully trial enrollment via this community-wide resource. Many sites find that they're just out there pounding the pavement, trying to build awareness of their trial on their own. So a lot of what they do is it's site-specific awareness or study-specific awareness. What we want to do is shift that to be more of a community-wide, multi-stakeholder effort, and to serve as a community resource to facilitate that information throughout the community. Next slide. So I don't know where we at with time. I need to probably hurry up, right, Carolyn? Where are we?
About 5-ish minutes would be good.
Okay.
And 5-10 minutes.
Okay, good. So just a quick, brief snapshot of some of our results, and we're very proud of these results. We are growing, not just growing and diversifying our workforce through these programs, but we're also growing our site network. We've added 40 new sites, I'm proud to say, in the last 3 years since launching the program. It's been about 129% increase. And we know that as our number of sites are growing, access also grows. And if you can see here, we're growing. Our programs are pretty attractive we are keeping them filled. Our CRC courses that we're offering, our PI courses, and we're driving more and more promotoras to the training as well. Many of the ones that are taking our training are bilingual. You can see there, 68% are bilingual, roughly. And that's really good, because if you want to increase diverse representation in trials, you need to not only increase the diversity on the provider side, but to do it on the patient side, it's really helpful if you have someone who speaks your language. We are retaining, we believe, these sites are hiring about 80. We believe they've added about 80 new jobs at least. Not many, we want more of our CTA grads to get apprenticeships, but we've offered 14. These are paid $16 an hour for 480 work hours. And a few of our PIs have taken us up on acting as sub-Is for existing sites. And our promotoras are out there. We've trained 15 promotoras to act as ambassadors, and that happened again just this past year. And they've since done 39 presentations and reached about 1,500 participants. Next slide. I'm just going to show this one, and then we could potentially end here. There's a lot more data to go through, but one thing I wanted to show you is that we're capturing most of our students are from West Texas. We want to do more in southern New Mexico, but we're thinking we need to add another partner to really drive up attendance from other regions. And the other thing I wanted to show you is that we're not just capturing about 80%. Basically, our student population looks a lot like El Paso, which is 80% of the population in El Paso is Hispanic, and we're capturing about that in our region. But we're also picking up a very diverse education group. So about half of our students have a bachelor's degree and above, and the other half have as little as a high school diploma and some associate's degree. And then many of our students have already had clinical trial experience or been employed in the healthcare workforce. And that's it for, I think what we want to do is go to the very end and open this up to any questions.
Thank you, Michaele. I have time for probably 2 questions from the audience. So if you have a question, I see Debbie already has a question, so go ahead and you can turn your camera on and ask.
Hi, I really like your program. I can tell you've done a lot of work. I just had a question. Did you see any significance in terms of passing rates between high school students and those that went to college?
No, we haven't seen a huge difference. We're seeing that about 70% of our students graduate from when we enroll, like maybe 50 students, about 75% of them graduate. And I'm not seeing a huge difference between those who have a high school diploma in some community college and those who have a bachelor's degrees and above. What we are trying to do, though, is this all comes down to jobs, and what our sponsors want to see is that not only are we graduating people, but we're actively helping them get employed. So that's where we need to do a better job. And maybe I actually think it's our students that are graduating with a high school diploma in some community college that are getting employed more at our local sites. And we need to build a better funnel for those who have a bachelor's degree and above. I think that's what we'll see from future data. Thank you for the question.
Well, are you marketing to high schools? How are you getting the word out about this program?
We have most of our referrals come from word of mouth. People have taken the program in the past, And then we also have really tight partnerships with academic institutions. UTEP, Texas Tech send a lot of students our way, Southwest University, and some from El Paso Community College.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Great. Would anyone else like to pose a question to Michaele on video?
I'll share a question from the chat
Thanks,
from
Shelby.
James. He said you mentioned the grant programs that started your organization. What are some of the training grants currently available?
Training grants. So we basically all of the training that we offer is tuition free. We get all of our funding from grants that we write, and they're supported by Bristol Myers Squibb, El Paso, City of El Paso, and El Paso County. I'm not sure I'm answering the question though.
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate the answer. I was just curious if like any CPRIT grants or any like NIH or any different organizations that you've worked with. So I know there's different training grants out there for PIs and other things. Just wondering how you got started. So I appreciate the answer.
Yeah, it's mostly from a corporate giving grant, and that's what we're going to seek again in this next round of funding. But we're also going to go after CPRIT grants and ARPA grants now that we have traction.
Thank you. Dr. Brody, I see your hand up.
Yeah, if you have just a quick moment. So I'm at Texas State University and I'm chair of the Medical Lab Science program, but I'm also at Austin Community College as a longtime adjunct faculty. I'm curious, I'm assuming you have actual academic affiliation agreements with some of those institutions in your regions?
Oh yeah, we have. That's actually become one of the most labor intensive pieces of this program that we're implementing. It's just we have about 20 contracts that we have to
Okay.
manage.
Yeah,
But yes, we have relationships with them that are not just a handshake. We have contracts. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I mean, one of the things that, and this may be discussion for later, but one of the things I'm always interested in is even my graduates could potentially work in this area because they're certified as a medical laboratory scientist, but there's other general degrees like health sciences and biomedical sciences, and a lot of those individuals, as you know, sometimes can't find work without a credential. So I'm just curious if you have a way that you're tracking some of those types of people with those types of degrees, or if you see a higher number with those types of degrees, where we could actually purposefully address those programs maybe.
Yeah, actually, it's on my radar to broaden this to other, to capitalize on maybe a dual certificate or academic 2-year degree laboratory science with the certificate in clinical research would be very competitive. What we see happening it's happening slowly, but our perspective is that there's going to be a marriage between the innovation side of healthcare and the delivery side of healthcare, and that those laboratory scientists are going to be right dab in the middle of all of that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, and to close out this Q&A with Michaele, Lynette, we have time for your question as our final question in this Q&A. Oh, unmute, please.
Still can't hear you, Lynette. It's on mute.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I wanted to address your when you mentioned that it was almost easier for your high school and early college graduates were the ones getting jobs.
Yeah.
And it's always been our question. We wish we could get to the employees sooner, because sometimes they go off and get a master's degree, but they really don't know anything more about clinical research than the high school graduate, and we'd rather have the high school graduate in the team. Have you talked to the sites? How is it? Is it because they can pay less, or what is the?
I think it's cultural. There's this perception that I'm sure a lot of speakers today would challenge me on this, and I'd welcome conversation. But so I think there's just perception that if they train someone with some as little as community college, and they have those transferable skills, which are they're really good at details, they're really good people, and they can multitask. If they have those transferable skills and they don't have a bachelor's degree, they're less likely to move on and move up. It's the ones that have, and I think there is some truth to this, the ones that have bachelor's degrees have more potential to advance after they get that 2 years of experience. So we've got to do something about that. I think you're going to maybe get a better employee too if you hire someone with more education. So maybe that's less of an issue if you have your talent pipeline right there and you have a lot of candidates right there to find and to train. But there's still, up until now, the burden of training was all left to the sites to do all on their own. In El Paso right now, people are appreciative that there's a community resource there to help them take some of that training off of their shoulders. And that burden off of their shoulders.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really think it's just they want to retain their employees, and those with bachelor's degrees move on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Well, let's take a moment to thank our speaker, Michaele Linden-Johnson, for sharing her novel programs addressing the clinical research workforce with us. I think we all had a lot of notes and takeaways, and we may come back to some of them in our town hall at the end of this day. We will transition now to our next speaker. I would like to introduce y'all to Mr. Harry Benson. Harry Benson leads a team in developing programs to standardize and improve workforce performance across industry sites. He is a former nuclear-trained submarine officer, an expert in organizational culture, operational excellence, and continuous improvement. With over 30 years of experience, his work has driven significant improvements for various companies. Harry Benson holds a BS from the U.S. Naval Academy and a master's in international business from Wright State University. And we look forward to hearing his talk on talent programs to address workforce needs. Welcome, Harry Benson.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for having me here. Let's take a quick systems check and make sure we're good. Will you see the screen?
It looks great.
All right, can you hear me okay? All right. Wow. Michaele, it was a perfect setup. We are in step. I got to tell you, I love that last point. Well, I don't love it. The burden of training has been on the sites. That is so true everywhere we go, right? So admittedly, my background tends to be more on the operations side of things, the GMP operations, et cetera. Sometimes, clinical operations, sometimes GMP, full GMP, full capacity. But regardless, what I'm hoping is what I share with you is the basis for and the foundation for programs regardless of the application. And we'll look at the bigger picture, because some of the questions that were brought up, Dr. Rody, about your degree program, and several people in the chat also, how are we connecting with the degree programs as well? Very valid to this whole discussion, and I look forward to this. One slight disclaimer: I literally have to catch a flight after this, so I really apologize. I won't be on the town hall, but I'm anxious to hear anything that comes out of that, anything I can contribute as we go on. So. Again, thanks for your attendance. So I thought, rather than, because there's going to be a lot of discussion on crossing topics here, rather than just get into just show you directly the program that I know prompted me being present on this in this forum. I want to give my take on the background of how we find it's most effective to create programs that are foundational for, let's just call it, workforce expansion, right? And workforce preparation. And that's what I focus on with regard to the human side of things, the people side of things. And what I mean is, in every operation, so to speak, every application, whether it's, again, full-scale production, it's clinical research, it's various other activities within the patient value chain, there are tasks that need to be performed, right? We need to figure out how to map those tasks in skills to roles, and then turn that into preparation and expansion of the workforce, because that is the constraint right now, right? If we're going to get repeatable results, this model is, or one like it, has been around since post World War II. The 3 Ps of operational excellence, right? People, procedures, and plant, they call it. But a plant being whatever the facility is, the equipment, instruments, the materials, etc. All of that has to be, you want to have them in control, right? To reduce variability and get consistent outputs. All 3 are prone to variability and require some attention. So today, obviously, we're focused on the people side, but it all ties closely together. They're not disparate silos of activity. I go back to this, back to train up to this level, because I'm hoping it's valuable to really think about this as we talk about the building of programs that are going to have a difference. Failing to do so leads to what we see at many, many sites in this industry, which is what we call the heroic staff approach, right? We have very dedicated, hardworking, smart people who will go to the ends of the earth for the mission, to help patients, to help the organization, etc., help each other, help their teammates, and it leads to many of these things, right? Not the least of which, from a business standpoint, is higher operational costs, but then errors, deviations, and so forth, things that cannot be controlled or demonstrated as in control or consistent, and then turnover, burnout, etc. Right? We see it all the time, and it's going to get worse if we don't have these kinds of programs like Michaele talked about, and others I'm sure will serve up, which is expansion of the workforce, reaching more people with what's available. From a job standpoint and a career track standpoint. I'm not going to dwell on this, but this is kind of if we don't, this is what we're left with, right? So many of you come from backgrounds, or maybe are deep in the background of education, training, workforce expansion, talent acquisition. The KSA model shouldn't be new to a lot of you. Knowledge, skills, and abilities. The abilities being, proven. OJT, as Michaele talked about. These are things that are tried and true. They're the best methods. And with today's digital capabilities, they can be strengthened, not resisted. So let's use the tools we have to teach practices, methods, product, and process. To get consistent output and qualify people to perform their roles. So let's figure out how you go about that. What are the steps to reach that point? Real quick, little FDA reference there. These are the CFRs on training, education, and experience. If you're not familiar with them, certainly encourage you to look at those. Obviously, they don't always apply if you're not, full-blown CGMP yet or what have you, but the methods are consistent, and they are surprisingly light as far as the requirements go. Light in the sense of requirement, verbiage, right? It's people need to be trained for qualified for the roles that they're going to perform, including supervisors and so forth, and they need to be regularly trained on quality. So there it is in a nutshell. I'm paraphrasing. Please don't quote that. Use the regs. So anyway, just thought I'd refer to those. But the model is, qualify people through a combination of blended learning. And I'll show you an example of or some examples of programs that we're deep into, and I think again is one of the reasons I'm here serving this forum. I always start with a process, whatever the process is. In clinical research, those on the call, all of you know more about that than I do, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. But certainly, you know, if you're going to have coordinators, you're going to have investigators, you're going to have other roles like that. There are things that they have to do. There's steps that they have to take, and throughout their job roles. You map those out. You map those out in a number of ways. It could be a standard flow chart, could be flow diagram. It could be this SIPOC, like you're seeing for this analytical lab. Here's an example of a full-blown SIPOC. I'll explain that in a minute if you're not familiar with the term. But you'd be surprised as to how valuable this can be when you take people who are doing the job, these heroic people I talked about earlier, and say, hey, let's map out what it is you do, or you have to do, or maybe should do, we can't get to, or whatever. And you map all those things out, and it's eye-opening for those folks, but then they become the architects of the programs that are going to train the new to the workforce people, or the new to the site people. Right? And that's exactly what we've done for a number of programs, including the program that I'll be demonstrating here in just a little bit. So in this case, these are sample control lab analysts and lab technicians and so forth, and what other things. This is more in the tech space. It's kind of an entry level, possibly. What do they need to do versus the one prior, which was, you know, actual analysts, right? I like that there's a lot of discussion about the roles that new to the workforce and those without bachelor's and master's and so forth could enter into. We absolutely have to do that. We've all said it. We all know it. Let's make it real by making programs that actually give them qualification to perform those roles and the vision of what's possible for them, so they can come into these programs, see what this is all about, say, yeah, I like this, and I see a vision for me in this career over time, and maybe it is a future degree, it's expansion within the role and so forth. But they have to see that there truly is work that needs to be done that they are capable of, and that's why you map this out. Quick tutorial. If I'm boring you, please feel free to chat on that. But the SIPOC is a lean model. It's the processes that are performed have inputs and outputs, and suppliers of those inputs and customers or receivers of those outputs. That's true of any process whatsoever, and that's exactly how you map it out, and it becomes clear as to what people are expected to do. You use that as a foundation for the programs that you're going to build for new to the industry. And one way we do it is we take each step of the process, break down those tasks. You have a governing procedure, SOPs, etc., methods, etc., and you figure out who at the lowest level, forgive the term, but the least educated level, newest level, whatever you want to call it, should be performing that role, because that's efficient for the organization, right? And it allows us to expand the workforce. Instead of having, say, a senior person like a production specialist doing glassware cleaning, for example, right? That's inefficient. It's not motivating to them, and it leaves out people who could be starting their careers, right? But you have to map it out task by task. Otherwise, you run the risk of just saying, yeah, I think we need, we could use a couple of techs, 3 or 4 at this site or whatever. No. Map out what needs to happen within your procedures, your processes, and then determine who should perform what. Now you have a model for who you need to hire at what level. The newer level, the more experienced level, and you can minimize the mismatch there. Notice when you do it this way, you can also map out your timeline for any given site or what have you. And this is exactly what we've done at several sites in Ohio, for example. And I know there's a lot of inertia as to what's going on in Texas, and I'm excited to be a part of it. The green block, for instance, is the date. Okay, that person, we need that person qualified to do the role by that date, because that's when we're going to start this effort or this process or whatever. So here's my hiring window with the drop dead date being the dark blue. And now I can give that material, that information, as well as the requirements to my talent acquisition team and so forth. And then we build our KSA matrix. Now I can say a new technician, a new coordinator starting this role needs to be able to perform the following. Boom, 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 boom. Now that doesn't mean they got to be able to perform that the day they walk in, but now that sets the stage for programs like onboarding programs, boot camp programs, and ultimately process qualification programs, right? So everybody has to have a training plan, regardless of how senior or whatever, because you need to know how to perform the tasks that are specific to that job role and that site, that process, whatever. So you build out a matrix. Is a very simplified example from, in this case, warehouse. I just tried to give a simple one. Obviously, if you're a primary investigator or something, it's going to be very diligent, and the expectations are going to be higher. But for entry level, you can map out exactly what's needed for that program, and give your requirements, as I mentioned, to talent acquisition. Say, this is what I need, this is what I'm looking for in junior levels, senior levels, etc. Now, let's get to what the program looks like afterwards. Now that we've done all that back end stuff, what do we need to expand the workforce, to reach more people through, through the mechanisms that we've already been talking about? There's an obvious three-legged stool. I don't need to tell anybody on this call, because that's exactly why we're here. There's the industry themselves, educational institutions, and economic development arms, right? Whether they be state, federal, industry serving some of that purpose, as Michaele mentioned, what have you. It's often a combination of the program that I'll touch on today. For instance, State of Ohio, OLS, Ohio Life Sciences, combined with Jobs Ohio, which there's analogous to some of the Texas programs. Earmarked funds for, in this case, Amgen, which was building a new plant in Columbus, and said, "Hey, these funds are for workforce development. They include talent acquisition, education, all the way down to the STEM level. They also include some kind of program like the one I'm going to show you, which in this case was a boot camp. We call it a GMP boot camp, but you could have a boot camp for clinical research, you can have a boot camp for any of these roles in the value chain." And then the last thing we're going to touch on is the very question that came up, is what kind of college level pathways need to be put into place. So the boot camp that we developed by using that model that I showed you is a blended learning model, right? So each afternoon, so they start their in-doc, get their computers and all that kind of stuff. This is where the community college, in this case, Columbus State, did a great job in as a partner, and we have other partners that we're doing in other regions. They begin, they get oriented and so forth, and now in the afternoon they spend taking a deep e-learning, self-paced learning, and getting ready for the topic that's going to be taught the next day by an instructor-led program, right? So it could be quality, could be material handling, could be, what have you, right? And then the instructor-led is the next morning, and it's blended with a series of exercises. So it's not exactly instructor then hands-on, it's very blended. But the hands-on is essentially OJT in a lab environment, right? So in doing so, and it builds, right? Each one builds on each other, right? So that, the fundamentals of good documentation practices gets trained on, and then they apply them throughout the rest of that program actively, right? Reading procedures and following procedures, doing things like checking calibrations and so forth. The fundamentals. They learn the fundamentals, and then they apply them with rigor throughout, gowning and proper technique, right? For instance, here's what the program was as a whole. It's a 3-week boot camp, and it's been taught. Got a couple hundred folks through it now. It just started last year. Kicked off. We have there's an element of I would say just fundamentals of the industry, and then we go into the practical elements, and then we go into actual automation and method of production, process controls, etc. And it's been very valuable, and it's been offered in a couple of different options, right? You can do the intense 3-week, blitz, but it's also been offered in at a more steady pace over time. And these kinds of boot camps, I think, make a lot of sense, right? You just have to be versatile in how you deal with them. And by the way, the question of funding came up. That same approach to earmarked funding or whatever, for these programs has been available to allow for vouchers for people that need it, to help with things like daycare and transportation. So all of that needs to be thought through as part of the program, not just, oh yeah, I guess we got to deal with this, right? It should be actively, developed within the program. I'm going to share with you a student perspective on this. Hopefully that'll show up right.
Building your online business?
Oh goodness sakes. Always the ad. Forgive me.
Go to Wix.com and set up.
All my background is into pharmaceutical, being in the supply chain. So when I heard about this boot camp, it's a very good opportunity to actually put into place all the theory, all those things we've learned in class, in lab, into actual practice. So that's why I joined the boot camp. The goal is to actually transform all the hands-on that I've learned here into the real world. Because most of the things that I learned in chemistry, biochemistry, is all in theory. So this bootcamp, and actually that's why I was really excited about it. You actually learn about the processes, the SOPs, the good manufacturing practices that actually goes into making those drugs, and more importantly, learning about FDA regulations to make sure that those drugs are actually safe. The rewarding aspect of it is you are involved in saving someone's life. So that alone is fulfilling for me. The advice that I have is people should look into Columbus State, look at the programs, especially the accelerated training programs. Those are really good programs. The world keep changing, pharmaceutical industry keep changing, new processes keep evolving. So you have to keep upgrading yourself, to keep up with the changing pace.
All right. There's another testimony from a young lady that came from, she was a hairstylist and decided to take interest in this program and join, and she succeeded. Both of those folks, and most of them, have been hired into apprenticeship programs or full hire on a packaging line or production line, and not just with Amgen, by the way. It was set up to help the whole community of industry, and that's the way Ohio has decided to set that up. I think it's a wise move, and we took inputs from multiple industry players, not just the primary sponsor in this case. Moving on to degree programs, we really need to look at pathways, right? What we're doing is we're setting up and certification programs, and with the state that allows partnership with those organizations, those universities, etc., who want to leverage their value in taking advantage of this certification program. The certification program is founded on the same program as pharmacists and pharmatechs, with a group called Profero team, and that team sets those per the DOE as to what pharmacists and pharmatechs, if you're familiar with that, have to certify on. We're doing the same thing for biotech professional, biotech specialists, and that's going to be tracks of various specialty. It could be anything from, like a clinical research, coordinator, analyst, what have you, pharmacists, all the way to, or it could be operations people, supply chain, etc. And then biotech leader, that one's in its infancy, but the other two are pretty much ready to go. These are programs that will have the content behind it, and we'll continue to develop that content based on the needs of the industry. And again, I'm showing this not because this is exactly what needs to happen in clinical research. I think it's a great model to consider for how we handle the clinical research side, because it really should be no different in structure, in my opinion. But I'm up for discussion from those who know best. Finally, the value chain to the patient contains a ton of areas, right? And this, I think, the fact that we're trying to expand the workforce, showing them that there's so much opportunity across the value chain, not just, hey, look at this program, look at this program. Do you want to go into clinical research? Do you want to go into GMP operations? Do you want to go into, dosing or supply chain? Let's show this, the world, if you will, STEM on up, that there's so much to, career opportunity here. Don't turn away. Look at all your options. And getting educational institutions behind this, I think, is going to be really key, because I know the funding will follow if the programs are sound. So I thought I'd end with that and really just ask a question to the audience, but obviously I'm open to questions from the audience as well. That goes without saying. My big problem statement is this, and I'm tasked with this. Even within CAI, I'm active with Nimble. These are things that I'm very passionate about, and I want to see happen across the country. But I will say Texas, like Ohio, is further along than most states, and that's wonderful to see. And I'd like to see that continue. I've loved what I've heard already, both from this forum and the other forums that I've participated in. So take a look, read this, tell me your thoughts on this or any topic at all.
Thank you, Harry. If anyone wants to address this discussion question or pose a new question, please feel free to raise your hand and use your mic and camera functions or the chat. Dr. Rohde, I see your hand up.
Hi, Harry.
Hi.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Harry, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for this presentation. Again, you mentioned earlier, so I am coming from kind of an academic setting, from both a community college and a bachelor's level program here at Texas State, where we produce medical lab scientists, which is a credential that they sit for to work in hospital labs. But the parallels with this CRA and other clinical research types of career tracks is so close to what we experience in the area of unawareness.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about early awareness, I'm interested, on your thoughts here, because what we have been trying to do at a very high level professional organization, even through legislative types of things to try to get more scholarships and things like that for early awareness, just kind of your experience. What we're trying to do is to actually put the name of our major in the level of junior high and high school level, because nobody hears about a medical lab science major. They hear about medical school, they hear about nursing, all the typical things. Do you experience those types of issues, and have you thought about actual ways to address it more purposefully, like down on the high school levels and things like that?
Yeah, we definitely experienced that. In fact, some of what we're doing is we're it goes without saying, teachers and guidance counselors are great sources, right? And you give them tours. You let them see the lab, the curriculum, have them give a tour of a real plant of what's going on, and have a discussion afterwards, right? Because we'd love to get to every parent too, but that's a little less practical. But reaching those people who have an influence on the discussion. And I liked your point, the terms. Yeah, it can't just be, healthcare in general or whatever. What specifically are some of the roles that I can perform? And I showed this one, for example. It's just to kind of, but yeah, you need to actually tie these two roles. And I heard Michaele mention it, before, your coordinators, right? Your clinical coordinators, your clinical investigators, obviously a little higher degree, whatever. But you have to go down to that level. So saying we're getting into STEM at the K through 12 and all that is great, but what's the outcome? What can I do, right? I can be a nurse, I can be a fire person, I can be whatever. Those roll off the tongue, right? How do we get them to think about these things as, wow, career opportunities? Because things like COVID did give us an opportunity to, somewhat educate, right, the public on what the heck this is all about. Let's take that and fully educate them a little more on some of the roles that their children or their themselves can participate in. The funny thing is it's, and I think you know this, I know you know this, it's not just the high schoolers, right? I mean, it's true. I could be getting my master's and still not have any clue about all these opportunities, right? Because
I tell my
ever brings them up.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my own story often because I got 2 degrees. I got a microbiology degree and a virology degree at a master's level before I knew I needed a credential to work in a hospital laboratory. So that's a failure on my part as an 18-year-old, but it's also a failure on academics that I didn't hear about this major and I knew I wanted to work in that field. So same here. Yeah. Right? I just think it's so important to find labels for these degree paths or these workforce related paths, whatever it's going to be, because moms, dads, counselors, everybody need to know it. And it's a challenge, right? That's kind of the challenge, I think.
I will say that on those lines, so some of the universities I'm working with are trying to weave programs, that we're producing into their curricula, but they're still saying it's, chemistry 101 or whatever. And we're trying to, that's the purpose of the certification program in my mind, as you've alluded, because now you can say, okay, I'm going to get my chemistry degree, biochemistry degree, whatever. But the output is also, I'm qualified to take this certification exam to be a X, whatever X is, right? You heard the gentleman on the screen there in the video. He was a chem bio major, dual major, but he didn't, again, know exactly what he's going to do with it. And so he took this and was like, oh, yeah, wow, look what I could do with this. And whereas the other story I had was a hairstylist, and she wanted a career change that would actually give her career progression and a little more, fulfillment. And it applied to both, right? But they had to learn that was out there. And to your point, I think the certification or credentialing, as you mentioned, is probably one of the hooks that we can use to give it a label, as you say. I like that point. It's a good one. Plus the funding of it. I mean, the economic development arms would be more likely to fund something with structured labeling and program and outcome versus, we're going to train the workforce to do more, healthcare stuff, right? That's too vague, right? So, my opinion.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I'll pose a question. Harry, do you have any explanation or additional information about how you chose the time frame for the boot camp or the number of hours? Even if you could share any information about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. It was created. It was not okay, we need to make a 3-week thing, right? But it was not that at all, right? And it's a little bit why I backed the train up, and I know some of it was probably fundamental for many of you as to how to build programs. So forgive me, educational programs. But you have to start with what will I be required to do? What jobs are out there? What roles are out there? And it starts with a workshop with the industry to say, okay, what roles are you needing? What are the tasks required for those jobs? And, break it all down. Okay, what are the skills and knowledge required to perform those tasks? And by the time we were done, there was a week and a half of GMP, of quality, of technique and practices, methods, fundamentals, and then there was basically a week and a half of productivity, automation, that kind of thing. But we blended them so that it's not like, okay, that stuff's over. You don't have to go down and document anymore and just go do these machines, right? It was all one big thing. And it turned out that 3 weeks was what was required. We could have reduced that. And it was interesting because it wasn't explicitly what, and I don't divulge too much, but what Amgen needed wasn't all of that. They needed this part, but they, to their credit, said, "Hey, this is about the greater good, right? We're good with using those funds to really train people to come into that workforce. We're going to take our our portion of it, sure, and they get first dibs because they funded and all that. But they recognized that there's much more knowledge needed and skills needed than just that segment that they needed at that particular plant. And so as a result of polling the rest of the industry in the area, we expanded it to all the areas, right, that weren't even necessarily directly relevant to the jobs that they were going to place. So that it was a combination of those things that led to there's a little bit of logistics, right? What's practical, et cetera. You can't take it too far. Otherwise you basically have a degree program. Yeah, it was a little bit of a balance. I sort of answered your question, I think.
Yes, you did. And just a follow up, so when, at least in my capacity, when I'm thinking about career exploration, career development, I think I'm interested in seeing and hearing more about how, having the on-site OJT, on-the-job training kind of in the environment, donning the gear, following all the procedures, how the difference in impact with that full experience versus us having folks come into a classroom and do like a guest lecture or show videos or do online training. Is it worth, in your opinion, the investment to have the trainees get the full 360-degree view of the experience?
Yes. And I think you could, and I'm sure some of the reasons, but my passionate reasons are a couple. One is it becomes very clear those who don't have a desire to go on. And when you sit in a classroom and watch video, I can do that, whatever, I can learn this, that's great. Okay, now I'm on the hook next to somebody who's validating, verifying, I'm doing this weigh and dispense of material, right? And documenting things. I'm in gown, gloves and at least gloves, lab coat, face, goggles, etc., or maybe full gowning on a couple of the exercises. Some of those folks, I just be like, this isn't for me, and they never advanced further, which is good for them and anyone else, right? And the program and the industry, because we didn't waste our time, anyone's time, including the students, in going something they weren't interested in. So that was one. The other is, you have to experience, as performing a classic weigh and dispense with gloves on or in some cases full gown. Can I really do that? Or what are the techniques? What are the tricks that help me do that? Oh, by the way, you still have to check calibration. You still have to document things. You still have to whatever, right? Do I want to do that? Right? And can I do this? Or is it a skill? And now that I've experienced it, I go to this site and I got a little salt on my shoulder now. I can claim I've done this, right? Absolutely. Night and day difference, in my opinion.
Great. Thank you. We'll see if there are any outstanding questions. We have time. If not, we can wrap up this speaker session. Okay. Thank you very much, Harry Benson, for joining us and sharing examples from your programming and your insight. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
So I'm very aware of just this is going to continue to grow, right? Which means there are jobs to be had, right? And there's a real career path here for folks to think about getting into this space. And whether you start off as a coordinator or you're in more of the regulatory space or you're a nurse and you want to do more research nursing, there's lots of different areas to get yourself in the door and starting to work in this space. And then kind of think about like what you want to do. Do you want to work in academic medicine? Do you want to work in pharma? Are you interested in, more of the scientific early space of clinical research? And so anyway, there's a lot to be, I would say there are lots of jobs to be had and lots of positions to fill. And that's just going to continue to grow. We have 86,300 clinical research coordinators that are known to us in the US. And I say known to us because there's a whole lot of people that are sitting in jobs like a clinical research coordinator. They're not well defined at some of the sites that those staff work at. So that was in 2022, and this role alone is expected to grow by nearly 5% by 2032. So again, lots of jobs, lots of areas to work at in clinical research. So it's definitely an opportunity to think about, and sometimes it's definitely not even presented to college students. And as we definitely know, it's not being talked about in high schools and middle schools and places like that. So we really need to get, I would say, front and center. And the clinical researcher job itself is not today recognized by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. There's a call out right now. I'm part of ACRP's work group that tackles a number of these different workforce issues. And we are, working on trying to get that established by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So more to come on that. And here are a few references too that you can check out for some of the data that I presented. So what's really at stake? Well, we know if we don't have enough people to work in this space, we're not going to have the medical progress that we need to make. We know that patient retention is an issue. So we need to have people working in clinical research actually stay in their jobs for a little while so that they can establish the relations with the participants and patients that are coming in to go on studies. If people jump all over on the job and there's a lot of staff turnover, we're not doing a good job. That then translates to not doing necessarily a great job at retaining patients in our studies. Data quality and integrity is really important. If you are not trained well and you don't understand that if I'm kind of sloppy about the work that I do, and that then translates to poor data quality, and that affects the integrity of the research itself. So we need to do a better job of bringing everybody in and making sure that they're well understood as far as responsibilities of the actual job. And then economic feasibility and profitability, this is where, we need to make sure that if I'm taking on the study at Duke, I can do that. I actually have a patient population. I need to make sure I have the staff to do the job, right? And make sure that we are getting studies up and running and not delaying things, because that's just costing us more with the industry, like the pharma company is spending more money. We're spending more money by lengthening the time it takes to do the research itself. So we wrote an article on this actually to tag on to Dr. Califf's paper, and many of you know he is the FDA commissioner. He also was at Duke for a very long time, so I know Dr. Califf, and he is, really a pioneer in this space of clinical research, of really saying this is important. We need to do more. We need to do better, and we need to do it in a much more, I would say, fast but safe manner for how we are conducting our trials. So he wrote this paper. Then I worked with a number of colleagues here, along with ACRP. Susan Landis is the executive director, on putting this piece together. Because one of the things that they don't say about fixing this evidence generation system that we live in terms of clinical research, they don't say too much about how important the people part of that is. And the people part, I mean the workforce, the staff that are really coming into these jobs and doing I always say the trench work, going to clinic, getting the patients on study, or taking on decentralized trials, which is a whole new model of how do we do delivery of these research studies in a very hybrid or decentralized manner. So we really have said, we being ACRP and a number of the folks that I work with across the country, that we have a shortage in clinical research workforce, and it's been a looming threat now for more than 15 years. So we have a lot of staff turnover. We know we have some major shortfall in applicants, like we just don't have enough people applying for the jobs, and that we lack diversity. And, representativeness in the workforce itself and overall representativeness in our trials is critical. We don't have good clinical trials and clinical trial data coming out, new medicines, therapies, all of that, if we do not have appropriate representativeness of people in our trials. So this is a perfect storm of issues. I've already mentioned some of these things with the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, not recognized, job. We don't have great pathways that are standardized. I'd like to think that Duke has actually set up, sort of a model and a framework for how we can do this better. And I will present some of that to you in the coming slides. Here we are. These are non-faculty clinical research professionals. And a lot of times we are overlooked as key stakeholders in this clinical research ecosystem. And we're not given sort of the credit of what it takes to do the work. It's a team effort. We cannot only be focused on the PI or other folks that are leading these trials, our physicians, et cetera. We have to really think about the whole team as moving these studies forward. So staff are really an important part of the success of the clinical trial. And I would say, and in contrast, like if you work in academic medicine, you don't make as much in a coordinator role as you might make in maybe a clinical research associate, which is going to be like a study monitor for industry, but it's a different job, right, for the CROs. And I think it's really important to think about a lot of times the things that you can learn in the boots on the ground, learn from people and the participants that you're recruiting in, you can apply that in your job going forward. And, who knows? I always say, you never know. You end up being in a job like mine. And I had no ever understanding that this would be the job that I would one day have. But I have taken it very seriously and taken a lot of what I've learned over the last almost 30 years, really thinking through how do we do what we do in research even better. And then just recruiting people into this space is so important. And we have to think about how are we building them up? How are we supporting them? How are we onboarding them, et cetera? So looked up some data about Texas, just because I thought it was interesting to know a little bit about what's going on in clinical research and clinical trials in Texas. And so, everything seems to be bigger in Texas. The state itself is very large. I look at the east and west side of Texas and I think, wow, there's a lot going on. I actually have a slide up next that kind of gives you a picture of what's going on when you look at medical schools and health systems, et cetera. But, you're home to more than 6,100 biotech-related manufacturing and R&D firms. You're second only to California for clinical trials started and completed. Those data are from ct.gov. Large workforce in biotech and life sciences industry, more than 105,000. Texas Medical Center is the world's largest medical complex. It's home to top-ranked biotech and medical research institutes. You have I think you have 4 federally designated cancer centers, with MD Anderson being the biggest and most well-known. Innovative research collaborations in some of these the world's largest medical complexes. And you have 2.3 billion in medicine and pharmaceutical exports. So there's a lot going on in Texas, which means there are a lot of jobs available in your area. So we need to start thinking about what that means. So I mentioned the east side and the west side of Texas, and that here's a lot going on in the east, right? A lot of work with the different types of health systems and medical schools. Not as much going on over here on the west side of Texas, but I know that you had a presentation earlier today where that was kind of a focus of some of the work that's gone on to sort of close the gap over here in the El Paso area. So exciting to see some of that work come out. So how were things? I mentioned in my bio, I started working at Duke as a clinical research coordinator, already had my master's degree, and this was in January of 2000. So have been there 24 years, almost 25, and things were really different back then. This is me, probably one of my first studies, which was a Claude Pepper study, which is an aging center study. And we did a lot of work with physical function and trying to preserve functional status and sort of attenuate the decline. So this is why research matters to me. As I got my start, I had done actually some research in grad school and certainly undergrad even at Penn State. But I really got into really digging in and understanding, like, what was it like to put somebody on a research study, and how do we translate the information that we're writing up and putting into protocols? How are we helping people understand what it is that they're agreeing to do, and how are we actually giving some of that information back to them? And so in my first 12 years at Duke, I spent all of my time pretty much running projects and working through these different a lot of these were distance-based medicine studies. So we were doing some decentralized trials even at that point in the game. We still had a lot of people that were coming into Duke as a site. We did some sub-studies out of this. That's what this is, measuring some functional ability. This is my timeline. The reason I put this timeline up here is not because I want to focus on or brag on anything that I have done. It's to help you understand that if you make a timeline from the very beginning of when you really start your career, whether that's, here I am in 1989, I was working on my degree and my undergraduate degree at Penn State in applied nutrition, didn't really know where I was going to go. You transition through all these different things that all are building your toolbox, every single thing. I would even say, working with rats in John Milner's lab still taught me some very good things about what it was like to do research process. I was doing a lot of P32 post-labeling, and I had to, essentially take tissue from the rats and plate it and put it in the incubator and watch cells grow, right? And what I learned was I didn't really love that kind of work, but I really did like the research process. So getting into some other areas that were more clinical and more tied into things I cared about, like in terms of nutrition and exercise, really started to resonate with the work that I wanted to be doing in my sort of work life. And I did a little bit of public health work. I did some work clinically as a dietitian at Moses Cone, but really my career settled down when I got to Duke, and that just grew from there. And I took on lots of other things to stay, sort of like keep myself very involved in nutrition. So developing professional groups that you can volunteer, like I did a lot with oncology nutrition, because I worked in the cancer space, really thinking about how you can take things and learn from these other opportunities that you have can really apply to your job and really give you some great tools to go sort of next steps, on where you want to take your career. So much of that I learned in so many of these different places, I always say it's part of my toolbox. So being a coordinator back then was, I'll say this is sort of the old school way of being a coordinator. My job wasn't reasonable for most staff. I was doing everything on probably 4 or 5 projects at a time. I might have one research assistant. They would come on, I would train them up. They would leave after a year and go on to something else. And mostly that was because they couldn't see any growth. Where were you going to go if I'm the project manager for all the studies and I'm writing and working on the methodology of the grants and I'm interacting with all the faculty on what we're doing? Where do you see a place for yourself? There isn't anywhere. There was no growth pattern for that individual, right? So every year I was training a new person to work on our studies. And that for me was exhausting. And also I never trusted that the work, something wasn't going to happen, right? So I worked a lot. And I would say the career ladder, that was just not understood. I had no idea how my career was going to evolve. And I was really at the mercy of the faculty member I was working with to really be engaged and want to see my success and really encourage me to do a lot of cross-collaborative teamwork. My team was really supportive. I wrote papers. I got a lot of great experience, but it was up to me. And then I needed the support of that person to really help me kind of make things go a certain way. However, what I did realize is that if anything happened to me, as much as I documented, I really felt like the whole place was going to come down because there wasn't a lot of systems and structure to sort of back all that information up. We had binders, I had a lot of paperwork. I had things on servers. But you would have to go and piece all of that together to try to figure out how to do my job. It was really difficult to build a team that could really kind of cross cover, et cetera. A lot of this is because of funding pressures. You know, if there's not enough money coming in to have 2 or 3 types of project managers, then it becomes really difficult, and one person ends up taking on the brunt of all the work. So in 2007, Wendy DeMark was the PI I worked with, and she moved on to MD Anderson, and then now is actually settled in at UAB. But she decided she was moving on. Another faculty member I was working with actually passed away from pancreatic cancer. And so 2007 was like one of those moments where I was like, wow, what am I going to do next? I have all these ideas. I really think I need multiple sources of PIs to work with to sort of, create that team model where there's a lot of backup and, people really know how to cover each other's jobs so that, I could go on vacation or somebody else could go on vacation and not feel like everything was going to fall apart or things wouldn't be documented or whatever, right? But these were all the things I was thinking about. These are just a sample of I would say, struggles and things that people weren't always paying attention to. And when you were a brand new coordinator, nobody was training you on them. You were just kind of figuring it out as you go. So I built a team in 2007, and I was working in the nursing school, and this is my little team at that time. And we were just kind of a group of folks that, some people were good at regulatory, some were good at data, some were great with interacting with participants and recruitment and that sort of thing. And so we just sort of became this thing that we called research management team. And research management team was a game changer because it was really the team that we sat under the radar. We were really about trying to help all these faculty, kind of launch their projects, do implementation, help them fix and solve problems that were related to the research that they were doing. And I went to the School of Nursing and I said, gosh, I've got this great little team. Can I make it bigger? Can I get some funding? And they were like, oh, nice idea, but we're not going to do that as part of the School of Nursing. I mean, you certainly can support the nursing school staff or faculty, but we're not looking to try to make this a bigger thing for Duke. And so I went to, at the time, Rob Califf's group, who was leading the CTSA at the time, which is the Clinical Translational Science Award. And I said, hey, I got this idea. The DCRI, which is our large academic CRO, does big global multi-site trials really, really well. Their coordinating center, that's what they do. They can't do the small stuff. They can't support the investigator-initiated stuff, the brand new little project work. But my team was doing a bunch of that. So they said, okay, well, here's a little bit of money, but you got to take on this thing called REDCap. And probably many of you hopefully have interacted with REDCap. And if you don't, someday you will, because it is just everywhere. REDCap is absolutely everywhere. It stands for Research Electronic Data Capture. And it came out of Vanderbilt and their CTSA group. So it's been an amazing tool. We use it a lot at Duke. But, it really kind of launched for me a way to think about doing research differently. And that includes the workforce, right? I talked a little bit about how important it is that you have cross coverage, you have multiple people trained on things, because you're not going to necessarily stay in the same job for 30 years. And I think that's an unrealistic expectation. And I do think that that's a reflection of the old school mentality in research. So I wanted to really build this community as I got this opportunity to make the team bigger and bring it to the School of Medicine. And one of the things I harp on is that, it's really important when you work in clinical research that you understand why. Why do we do clinical research? Why don't we just work in the hospital? Why don't we just do clinical care? If you're working in clinical research, it's because you want to change care. Care looks a whole lot different for breast cancer, say stage 4 breast cancer, which I used to work with probably 30 some years ago. And those individuals didn't live with a stage 4 diagnosis. But today you can live with a stage 4 diagnosis and treat it like a chronic disease. So that's why clinical research matters and why we do what we do every day. So in 2012, I took the initial idea that I'd been incubating since 2007, and we created something called the Duke Office of Clinical Research. And DOCR really became about building up, a group of individuals who can really help make research easier at Duke by supporting our investigators, creating some study team training and development, and really looking at how do we do policy better? How do we make changes? How do we stop doing things the way we always did them just because that's the easy way to do it, right? It's easy to say, no, we can't do that. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, the regulatory space, the work of clinical trials has only become more complex, not less, since I started working in this area. So we really became this one-stop shop to really help and implement and make more research happen at Duke. So I'm going to highlight that we have more than 2,000 faculty and staff that are doing research at Duke today. We have almost 1,000 clinical research professionals. We support a number of different systems. And I talk about the three things: people, processes, and systems, and that all three of these things have to be things that are focused on and supported from an infrastructure standpoint. But today I'm going to focus on people and what we've done to sort of create that community and the workforce that I mentioned before. So, how do you, as a site, no matter what kind of site you are, hire, train, onboard if you don't even know who the clinical research professionals are? And I say that because remember in the very beginning, I said, that's a nice number about clinical research coordinators, from 2000, but I'm pretty sure we didn't track it very well. And there probably were a lot of people in jobs that were doing work like a clinical research coordinator, but weren't in that kind of a title. So we really had to start to get at creating this professional pathway and establishing an identity. So in 2014, I got a hold of the JTF framework, which stands for Joint Task Force. And this was written by Stephen Sonstein and colleagues. And it really kind of helped us think through all the different areas that clinical research, the job itself encompasses. And some jobs are obviously going to be more focused on things like scientific concepts and research design. And other jobs might be more focused on data management and informatics, which is number 6 on this wheel. But in general, these were all the domains that really needed to be the focus of our jobs. And our jobs back then, it took us 2 years to really work through leadership buy-in, work through our work groups. We had a governance group, lots of department involvement, faculty involvement, ad hoc working groups, and really a core team that sat in DOCR that really said, you know what, we've got to do better, and we've got to make sure that we're rebuilding our jobs. So we had more than 80 plus jobs at that time that defined various job duties for people, and it wasn't consistent. And so therefore you could come in and take a job with us, but you didn't really know where it was going to go. You couldn't see any kind of pathway. We Dukified the competencies that were kind of established in the framework and really kind of built them out and really became leaders in this space. So we updated the jobs just so they were more reflective of the actual job that they were doing. I will tell you that my job never read quite the way my job actually was. And so we needed to fix some of that. We needed to identify competencies and performance criteria, look at career ladder and career progression. These become huge recruitment tools for us now when we're really trying to bring staff into the institution to take jobs that we have posted. They can see a career ladder. They see the progression. And we really wanted to make sure the staff were appropriately classified. And we also wanted to make sure that they were appropriately paid for the classification, because that became it's been a real problem, not paying sufficiently for this job. I mentioned in the beginning, it is a complicated job. It's not easy. We expect you to do it really well. In a highly regulated industry, we need to be compensating for that. And so we mapped our jobs that were there and then reestablished new jobs. And then we did this for the schools of nursing and medicine. So this is what the job ladders look like, just to kind of give you that idea. Again, we went from 80 to now, then we went to 12, and now just recently in February, we added data positions to this framework. We have written this up, so we have a lot of good information. We meet with a lot of other institutions so that we can help them do this at their site, because I always say you can't just take what Duke did and plop it into another health system at Texas and say, oh, this is going to work in this medical school. It won't work exactly the same way. Jobs are just different. They're different by state. They're different when they're private versus public. Even UNC, which is only 8 miles from us, we're still working with them on how they're restructuring their jobs. I want to just give you a little bit of data. So you can see, remember I said we started this work in 2014. It was fiscal year 2016 when we mapped. And we went from pretty high attrition rates around then. I think we were up around 24% when we did our initial mapping. And now it's been a pretty steady stream, even with the pandemic, where we saw the Great Resignation. We still did a good job of hanging on to our staff. So this is a real success and a testament to having a framework, having jobs, having definitions, having career letters, and having an ability to really wrap your arms around a research staff workforce and community and help them see how you can really put together great work for them, and training and onboarding and things like that. So today our framework is called Workforce Engagement and Resilience, and for short, we call that WEAR. We have a number of onboarding and training initiatives as part of this, and this is all about supporting the staff, supporting managers, helping people who are brand new under our new hire cohorts and mentoring. That's been fantastic. So you can these are just some numbers. I'm not going to read them to you, but you'll have them for later. And then we have a number of other initiatives related to this. Research Professionals Network. All of this is about bringing people together as a community professional topics that are relatively important to the research professional. That's not about doing your job. It's about being a professional in your job. And those are different things. Engagement, recruitment, retention certificate program. This is about getting into, again, digging into things like representativeness in our research and thinking about how we enroll for those types of, or for all kinds of clinical trials, a representative population. We do a lot of sharing and consultations that I mentioned, and we do a lot of competency-based course development work. So it's a busy organization to make sort of this workforce community matter. And, we really talk about how do we help make clinical research more human, and making sure that we establish those meaningful connections through all the work that we do, that we share the same values. We want to show that to our participants. We want to say thank you to them. We want to make sure our staff are compensated fairly and that we are handling things appropriately. If people are spending a lot of extra time, how can we help? Insisting in our staff building up their skills, that toolbox that I talked so much about, and that we really think about the necessary support that we need to offer our staff to make sure that they don't burn out. And some of that's helping our managers understand, hey, this person is doing a whole lot. What's causing that problem? Do we need to have more FTEs? Do we need more funding? Is somebody taking more of their time than is expected? That kind of thing. So really helping managers do a better job of assessing what's going on. So what can you do about building your toolbox? You can, think about like, okay, I'm coming into this job. I'm a research assistant, and I'm going to move up this ladder, and I want to think about getting into being a CRC. I want to be a team lead. I want to be a manager. I want to be a director. I mean, what are some of your goals? And also understanding that those goals don't develop overnight. And I talk a lot about my toolbox, but for 7 years, I didn't move from my job. I kept the same job. I took on new projects. Certainly the studies were moving along in many different timelines, but I really spent the time to learn and really get good at what I was doing. And then the other experiences kind of find you. And I think that still remains true. So professional development, though, let me just comment that I think a lot of times professional development needs to be up to you. And what I mean by that is this is a lot of times taking on a volunteer organization or, volunteering to be on a committee or doing things that are outside your regular job. And it doesn't just happen. I mean, sometimes people ask you, and that's great, you can be asked, but sometimes you just need to get out there and volunteer and get noticed. And if you're reliable and responsive, people will ask you to do more things, and you can't do everything. You have to be cautioned that you can't do everything, but do the things that really get you excited about the work that you're doing or the people that you're working with. Because building the relationships and really understanding engagement will help you so much in building relationships with people and getting to know people. And just think about always adding to that toolbox. So I have a couple more slides, and it's just because I wanted to make sure that you understand that, you're one person in this whole ecosystem. You can make a difference by, encouraging change and, listening and getting more educated about things like participant engagement. We just launched this new website for participant engagement because I've felt for so long that we've had so many gaps in our infrastructure and really being able to provide information to participants and people who are interested in participating in clinical research. So just understand that the other side of this, there's a volunteer human being who's giving you their time. Be respectful, take the time, be engaged. It really matters. And lastly, this is just another one to just demonstrate how important it is to thank our volunteers. We have these volunteer registries in a lot of different places. This is just the one that we happen to have at Duke, but it's just so important when you think about clinical research and what we're doing in terms of changing care, that the workforce itself is such a critical piece, and that many of you will be a patient, or you will have family members who are patients. We have to be respectful and think about the individual, and all the pieces of what we're doing matter. Because we're protecting these people and their information. If you think about it in terms of privacy and confidentiality and all these things that make the job more complicated, but really important that you do it right and you do it with integrity. So with that, I'll just take questions and say thanks. And here's my certainly our contact information at my office.
Thank you, Denise. Great talk. I think we all have some key takeaways. We definitely have time for questions from the audience or comments. And so please use the raise hand function, and you can choose to ask out loud or via chat. I'll go ahead and just get us started. I saw on your We Are slides a bit about internship opportunities. Can you just expand on how you involve interns in your
clinical
center?
research? Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's great. We actually have something relatively new called CRISP, which is related to our clinical research internship portal. But now we have I bet we have 25 agreements with other institutions where they can send interns to Duke, and they can actually have a real experience in clinical research. And what I mean by that, it's not just mimicked, right? It's actually access for that trial, say to the medical record, or maybe it's access to certain data. They can really actually be active and working and understanding what it's like to be a coordinator and doing a lot of shadowing work. We wouldn't have necessarily an intern consenting a patient for a clinical trial, but we're going to have them have that experience by getting the shadowing. So the internship experience has actually been fantastic. And I'm looking for more and more expansion of that. It's not paid. I think that's the challenge. Is that it is an unpaid internship, but a lot of the schools that we have agreements with will give credit. So they'll get, some of their college credit, et cetera, related to the internships. And we have a lot of specifically clinical research degree programs that have been participating in this. So if that's of interest to anyone, to certainly let us know, because we continue to expand those agreements. And once we have an agreement with an institution, they can send as many students as we can get matched up with different study teams. And we have training specific to the mentors and the mentees and the preceptors and folks that are really responsible. Because one of the things that I would say we saw a lot of is, students coming and they're talking to somebody about having a research experience with a faculty member, and nobody's paying any attention to that student, right? It's not structured. They don't necessarily get all the training. Sometimes they would get hired in, but more like in sort of an assistant manner, but not, they might be just doing the same thing all the time. And, I sort of say these internships are about real learning and experience, not making copies, for lack of a better comparison.
Great, thank you. Dr. Rohde.
Hi, Denise. Really, really enjoyed your presentation. I'm here at Texas State, chair of the Medical Lab Science program and involved with the Translational Health Research Center. I'm curious, you mentioned that you don't have paid internships, but do you have opportunities for any university, including some program like mine, where a person could come in and do a block so we have required clinical rotations, but I'm always looking for opportunities for our students, and I'm wondering, do you have those type? I know Duke doesn't have an MLS program that I'm aware of, a medical lab science program, but I'm curious if we or other universities had those types of agreements. Do you see a way that those types of students could come in and do maybe a shorter term, 3 weeks to a month or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. We do that. We have some groups like, I'll just use, I think it's UNC Wilmington. I mean, obviously,
Okay.
North
Yeah.
Carolina. Jared Carr is in charge of that clinical research program, right? The degree program, and he sends students to us and we get them matched up. And they're not paid, it's not paid, but they're getting, so they get course credit or their rotations, or they get something for it. And all we've done to get those set up is we have a pretty detailed affiliation agreement that I've taken all the way to like council and risk management and all these different places, because my main thing was what I kept seeing was either the side door, somebody comes in working for somebody, but then they can't get access to anything, right? And that's frustrating because they're not paid. When you're a volunteer, you're not paid. And then there's all the, sort of, I would just call them, maybe sometimes perceived barriers to getting access to things. And I wanted to kind of try to pull those away. And so this is just one way that we've done it, is through it's sort of a mutual agreement. Duke signs it, the other institution that's sending the student or trainee to us signs it, student shows up, and certainly we support them.
Okay, excellent.
And so I'm happy to, if you want to email me afterwards.
I will. I just sent you a connection on LinkedIn, so
I'm happy to get you connected in with my team that's handling a lot of those agreements. And then it's, sometimes they go pretty quickly, and then, it depends on the other institution.
You mentioned that you have several degree programs in clinical research. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Duke does not. We work with NCCU, which is North Carolina Central, and Durham Tech. They both have programs. And then UNC Wilmington has one. I can't remember if Campbell. There are a number of different colleges and universities that have those programs. And I don't know, is yours a clinical research degree program?
No, it's not. It's a medical lab science. And when they graduate, they get the credential to practice in the medical laboratory. But as I've mentioned to other talks today, we're very, very much like clinical research associates. People don't know about us until they do, and they realize how critical, and it's really critical. But anyway, I just really appreciate your presentation, and I really thank you for being here today. So thank you so much for your great presentation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'll ask a question from the chat from James. He asked, with the research assistant or entry-level clinical research coordinator job titles, how long are you seeing the skill set needing to train until they can lead studies? And then a follow-up question, what changes are you seeing in the early talent development?
Yeah, and so if somebody comes in at a clinical research specialist level, which is a non-exempt job, right? It's hourly. I think that really ends up being a couple of things. One, up to the individual. We see people, actually, we don't see a lot actually coming into the CRS position. We see a lot of people come into the CRS senior. And that's because they already meet certain criteria, like the minimum qualifications for the job. And a lot of times, most studies want people to have that level of skill already, which doesn't mean that they've ever worked in clinical research, but there's certain things that they can train on and get them up to speed pretty quickly. We see a lot of people flip from that non-exempt CRS position into the CRC job, which is now an exempt job and it's salaried. Pretty quickly, depending on the number of studies they take on and that sort of thing. I don't know the numbers of conversions because we still have a good group of staff across Duke who don't want that responsibility, right? And they want the hourly job and they're happy to, continue to do the job and do the job well, but aren't necessarily interested in that career ladder. So, but we definitely have far more CRCs in our workforce today. Probably, I'm going to estimate somewhere between 350 and 400 out of that 900 to 1,000 that I mentioned. So a significant number of our people are in that CRC job. In the CRC job, what I didn't mention in the ladders, CRCs, the reg coordinators, as a research program leader, and then a nurse coordinator, they can all tier advance within the job itself. And so that's helped keep people in the job for longer periods because they get a little bit of a raise each time they do a tier advancement. So they can go from a 1 to a 2, 2 to a 3. And with each of those, they get a salary bump. And that's helped because we don't see as much turbulence across the institution of people just jumping from job to job to job to get the next little raise. And those little raises, they're nice to have, but they weren't worth like leaving something, as I mentioned before, where you really kind of have an opportunity to grow something in the job itself, whether that's, making sure you stay on a project that's 2 or 3 years long before you make a change to the job, et cetera. So hopefully that answers your question.
Looking if there's any further questions before I ask a second one. Okay, I'll go ahead. So in your diagram of all your roles, you mentioned your new area of clinical research data related positions. And are you finding you're having applicants and folks filling those roles from additional areas of expertise or for like coming from different, whether it's 2-year or 4-year programs with different backgrounds, then, expanding your potential like workforce pool of potential applicants by adding on those types of roles?
So where I think this has been helpful to us, for a long time, we had a lot of these disparate data positions across Duke too, that maybe somebody had a degree in some type of IT space or something like that. Didn't really want to be in IT, but wanted to be in the sort of the more working alongside the patient data, but not necessarily working with patients, right? So it fits that kind of personality and mold, and people who kind of like to dig into the data in the back end and do, for us, certainly doing a lot of red cap work, that kind of stuff. So it's helped fill a niche, a gap, and I think lots of different kinds of people come into those jobs. I have people that have been like degrees in math and don't know quite what they want to do when they come out of their 4-year degree. And those positions don't require a 4-year degree. They can have an associate's degree plus 2 years of experience of some kind. It doesn't necessarily have to be in clinical research because we always said that's really tough. When we reworked these jobs with our HR and our compensation folks, I sort of said, can we do something about these minimum qualifications that makes it sound like they have to have data experience already? Where are they getting that? They might need to get that on the job. And that kind of actually ties back to the question about the clinical research assistant specialist position. Where do you get the experience if you haven't had any experience or your only experience was in school, right? So trying to help people, I call them translatable skills, a lot of transferred skills, things that you've learned in other areas, whether it's like retail or whatever, they can translate to jobs in the research workforce that certainly counts as experience.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before we wrap up this session? Okay, well, thank you, Denise, for joining us and sharing your presentation and examples of your programming, your own story, and strategies for recruitment and workforce development and retention. We enjoyed your talk, and we're so happy you could join us today.
Thanks so much. I appreciate being here.
Great. Great. I'd like to welcome Lisa Shaw. Lisa Shaw is the TXWorks Internship Coordinator at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and TXWorks. TXWorks, which means Reinforcing Knowledge and Skills, internship program is a program that provides students with opportunities to build their resumes through paid and professional work experiences aimed at strengthening their career readiness. And today, Lisa will be joining us to talk about the internship program and how y'all can get involved and learn more about it. Thank you, Lisa.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today. This is really exciting. It looks like everybody's gotten tons of great information today. So hopefully this helps with that, adds to everybody's repertoire of knowledge and resources that they have available. So let's see, Shelby, I have the PowerPoint. If you have it and you want to share it, that's totally fine. If you'd like me to, just let me know.
Whatever your preference is, I'm happy to share my screen and you can tell me when to advance, or you can share your screen.
If you want to go ahead and do it, and we can just advance whenever it feels natural.
All right, that sounds good. Let me share.
I'm operating on a single screen today, so thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that good for everyone?
Okay. Looks great. Fantastic. So the TXWorks program, thank you for that great introduction. We are a program that's housed at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. So I just kind of like to let people know that, so that you know that we are a program that's housed by the state of Texas, and we already have really great working relationships with the colleges and universities across the state of Texas. So this is our team. Vanessa Malo is our director, and she would say that we are small but mighty. Any communications with us, you'll often see all three of our emails on there, just to make sure that nothing falls through and that all three of us are taking really great care of you. Also, the TXWorks email address there at the bottom, txworks@highered.texas.gov. If you email that email address, or a student does, or an organization that may want to take part in our program, that actually comes directly to all three of our desks. So we man that, and we are very quick to respond to that also. Like I said, Vanessa Mullo is our director. I'm the internship coordinator. We also have Amy Dalton, who works with us. She's our outreach coordinator. I call Amy our secret weapon. So she does a lot of direct outreach to students, as well as to colleges and universities across the state of Texas. And we're able to be really strategic with our outreach, which is helpful. And as we go through a little presentation, I'll kind of bring that up where it's helpful. So TXWorks, again, Carolyn did a great job letting you know that TXWorks stands for Texas Working Off Campus, Reinforcing Knowledge and Skills. And it is an internship program. So we were developed as part of the Tri-Agency Workforce Initiative between the Higher Ed Coordinating Board, TEA, and the Texas Workforce Commission. So this is a legislatively funded program from financial aid appropriations within the state of Texas. So this is purely a Texas funded program intended for Texas students, supporting Texas colleges and universities, as well as Texas businesses that are here in our great state. So some of the examples of work-based learning, work-based learning honestly just seems to be everywhere right now. I see it on the news. I hear high school students talking about it. We get lots of questions about it. And it takes a lot of different shapes and forms. Of course, internships are a word that we're very familiar with. Apprenticeships are another type of work-based learning. Job shadowing, on-the-job training, externship. So there's lots of different forms that it takes. For the purpose of our program, work-based learning for organizations that have signed up with us and students that are participating with us, we call them internships. So if your program or programs that you're working with have a little bit of a different flavor, as long as they fall broadly into work-based learning, they're typically programs that we can support. Vanessa, did you want to add anything to that, or?
No, I appreciate it. It was a great explanation of all the different forms of work-based learning. Ultimately, I think what Lisa will also share with you is we try to share the different types because it's not a one-shoe-fits-all. And we want students and everyone to know that although we have this wonderful opportunity that Lisa's going to share with you, there are a lot of other options as well that might be best for your students that you're serving. Thanks, Lisa.
Sure. So with TXWorks, again, focusing on internships, more and more students are very familiar with the value that they bring to them on a personal level with helping them build their experience and their resume. Completing college, more and more often we see that the internships and apprenticeships are required for certain certifications and college degree programs. And then actually just developing the skills. I used to work in a high school, and one of our programs there was criminal justice. So I would remind students, you really don't know what it's like to just learn the academics of it. You really need to get out there and learn the skills, what it's like inside that environment, what it looks like, feels like, smells like, sounds like. All of those environments are really different. And we serve a number of different programs from accounting to welding and lots of things in between. So these programs are valuable. Lots of employers who weren't traditional offers of apprenticeships or internships are now starting to see the value of it too, and developing that workforce. So we're getting a lot of non-traditional applicants to the program who are looking to begin offering internship programs. We are singularly focused on helping to fund the hourly wage. So all of our internship opportunities are paid opportunities for students, which is a huge benefit for students, and it also becomes a huge benefit to the employers as well. So we're going to look first at the requirements for the internship programs from kind of the employer's lens, like what we're looking for and the type of relationships that we develop, and then the parameters around that. So we look for opportunities where employers can pay at least $15 per hour. So we wanted students to be able to earn a living wage while they were in college. So this starts to include a lot more students who may have previously had to work while they're in college and may not be able to afford to take an unpaid internship. So participating with us means that employers agree to pay at least $15 per hour, although we don't prescribe what the wages are. So if an employer wants to pay $23 an hour, or it's a really highly competitive field and they're paying $30 or $35 an hour, that's all totally fine. We don't prescribe what the wages need to be so long as they meet that minimum of $15 an hour threshold. That third bullet point is what a lot of our participants get really excited about because we reimburse a portion of the wages to the employers. So that usually breaks down to 50%. So if an employer is paying $20 per hour for a student, we can reimburse them $10 an hour of that hourly wage. That being said, there's some requirements for employers to meet and have them sign up with our program, which we're going to dig into all of that. And then some requirements that students have to meet as well. By the way, if anybody has any questions along the way, feel free to pop them in the chat. We can kind of grab them as we go, or if I know we're going to cover that coming up, we'll just keep cruising through till we get it. And Vanessa, Amy, feel free to stop me anywhere along the way. You guys are really great at letting me know when I've glazed over something that we need to dig into a little bit more. We can go back one real quick, shall we? Employers and interns negotiate schedules. So we don't have a set minimum number of hours per day or week or anything like that. We do ask that employers offer at least 96 hours of paid internship hours over an internship period, which those are roughly broken into semesters. So we'll look at some of the dates on those in a minute. Like I said, employers can offer more than $15 an hour, and we will still reimburse them at 50% of that rate, as long as they're not paying more than $40 per hour. So we do have some limits. And interns can work consecutive periods for an employer, and they can work multiple periods for an employer. So that's really good news. So it's not just a student can work one period and then they're done. I think it really takes a full year for somebody to learn how to do a job and see what that cycle looks like over the course of a year. So I'm really happy that our program can support that. So like I said, a minimum of 96 hours. Again, it can be more. We have some internships, like some of our accounting firms. Of course, in the spring, that's really their busy season. And so they offer internships that are anywhere from 25 to 40 hours a week. So we let the students, the employers negotiate that together. Internship periods can be for more weeks or hours than what the minimum of 96 hours is. But we want it to be at least a minimum of that. Here's our sample internship periods. Summer just wrapped up, so we already have employers submitting their financial reports to get reimbursed. Fall just started, so it'll go through December. Spring is our longest internship period because it starts right when fall stops and goes through that spring internship period. We had to arrange our schedule so that all of our periods kind of butted up towards each other. It's surprising, but most businesses don't operate on the same kind of schedule as schools do. So if a student still is interning once the semester has ended, the student still gets the benefit of that, and the employer does as well. So we kind of operate parallel with schools. So our internship could be for credit, but that's not a requirement on our part. So this is just a little sample of internship hourly wage potential with what the reimbursement would look like. I know math can be hard, but this isn't hard math, just to show you that we can support different hourly wages. So the application and agreement process, this is what it looks like when an employer reaches out to us and says, this seems like a great program. We'd love to offer internships. We haven't been able to pay them previously, but we think we might with your help. So we'll go through what that process looks like for employers. In short, these are the 5 steps that we need to take. They register with Texas Internship Challenge. So Texas Internship Challenge is really a website. It's not a challenge, and it's put out by the Texas Workforce Commission. So it's part of that tri-agency initiative. This is one of the really big pieces that they support us with. We ask for all of our businesses to register here to post internship positions, and then we also ask students to register here. Among other things, it gives students peace of mind that these are legitimate businesses within the state of Texas and not necessarily like recruiting organizations. We'll get into each of these two. We have an online application, capacity plan, some vendor documents, and then implementation. That's the fun part. So this is what the Texas Internship Challenge website looks like. Anyone can register as a student and peruse the site, or not necessarily a student, someone looking for an internship. So you can kind of see what some of the job postings look like. And we ask for all of our employers to register here as well. Again, it gives everybody peace of mind that this is an affiliated website. These are legitimate businesses that are offering these. Now, whether or not you participate with TXWorks, businesses can register here and post internship opportunities. Just like students, maybe they're students who aren't eligible for our program, but they're still interested in internships, they can register here and search for internships as well. Career readiness competencies. So we do ask our employers to develop some career readiness competencies that students will be learning. These are really broad stroke career competencies. I heard in the last presentation about all of the transferable skills, and that's what these are. We know that students are learning these in every type of work that they do, academically, in the workplace, and lots of places. So we ask employers to identify some of those. Since we are an education agency, we're always interested to see what types of skills students are learning and able to take those with us or with them. So all employers complete this at the very beginning. This also kind of helps employers stay mindful that while students are doing work, that this is still related to the academics that they learned, and it helps students articulate the skills that they've learned as well. So we found this report to be really helpful. And employers only have to fill this out at the very beginning of their internship opportunity with us. Let's see, let's go back a couple slides so I can dig into, and one more, yep, right there. Our online application, so this is posted by Qualtrics. Thank you for popping the link in there. Employers can fill that out, and that lets us know the type of industry they're in, where in Texas they're located, that kind of thing. So that's pretty simple, and that alerts us that they're interested in hosting internships through TXWorks. Sometimes folks reach out to us directly. Sometimes they get a hold of our application and send that right in. Number 3, the capacity plan. When we put a grant agreement together, we do it for the next 2 years. So the capacity plan helps an employer look at the next 2 years by semester to see how many interns they may hire, how many hours they may work, and does a calculation so that we can see how much funding might be needed. Often when we have a first-time applicant, we try to keep the amount a little low just to make sure that everybody's on board and understands how the process works. But it's not, we want you to be covered, but we didn't want to over allocate and then have somebody else not get funding. So we work with you on the capacity plan and make sure that you know how much you're responsible for, and we know how much we're responsible for. We have vendor documents. As a state agency and as a participating employer, they would be a grant recipient. So we have vendor documents that have to be completed and turned in so that we can pay you. Amy and Vanessa and I all work with you to fill those out. None of them are difficult. They're just not super intuitive. So we have a direct deposit, which is easy. We have a child support certification. In the state of Texas, if any state agency pays you money, that's a requirement to turn in a child support certification form. And then we have a TINS form, and that is the form that connects you to our agency for payment. So we're happy to help with all of those. Once we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, we're able to start processing that application internally. And that takes anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks generally to have that fully processed and ready for implementation. Now we can pop ahead. All right, student participation. For the student participation process, we have some criteria that students need to meet as well. And we vet the student eligibility for the employers. That's one of the questions we get a lot, like, who's going to tell us this? And we help with that. So students need to be a Texas resident. So they need to live in the state of Texas and be going to an eligible college or university in the state of Texas. Texas State, great example of a 4-year university. Go Bobcats. It's my alma mater for my graduate degree. And we can support 2-year schools, 4-year schools, public or private. So students can go to a really wide variety of eligible colleges and universities in the state of Texas. Most of the strictly career schools in the state don't qualify for our program. They're a post-secondary institution. So if there's ever a question about an eligible school, we just encourage you to reach out to us so we can let you know. Students need to be undergraduate students. So they need to have already graduated high school, but not graduated from college yet. So again, if they're going to a 2-year school for a certificate or a 4-year school for a certificate or working on undergraduate work, they're welcome to do that. We also get a lot of questions about high school students are eligible because a lot of them more and more are taking college credit courses while they're in high school. So those can help towards eligibility because students already need to have completed 6 hours at an eligible college or university. So if they're getting dual credit while they're in high school, once they've graduated from high school, as long as they're still enrolled, that meets that eligibility requirement. They do also need to have already graduated high school. And then students can participate in more than one TXWorks internship. So they can participate in up to 3 periods at a specific organization. But when they finish with one organization, if they are still eligible, they can participate for another 3 periods with another organization. So we highly encourage students to participate in as many internship opportunities as they can while they're going to school. For financial eligibility, students need to meet at least one or more of the following circumstances within the last 2 years. So these are like ors, 1 or more. They need to have completed a financial aid application, so FAFSA or TAFSA, and have an expected family contribution or the student aid index of 0 to 20,000, or have been eligible for a Pell Grant, or the Texas Educational Opportunity Grant, or be eligible to be funded through Texas Leadership Scholars Program. So if a student was eligible, for example, for a Pell Grant, but they weren't able to claim those funds in time, or they opted out of using Pell Grant funding, as long as they were eligible, that still makes them eligible to participate. And again, we vet that through the student eligibility form directly with students. When students complete their eligibility form, that comes to us, and then they either receive an eligibility letter, which is their evidence that they are eligible to be funded through this program, or they get an email just reminding them of their requirements. Sometimes students make an error completing out the form. Sometimes their situation changes, so they are more than welcome to submit an additional form. So this QR code goes directly to that form. It looks like Amy popped it in the chat. Thank you very much. So we ask students to fill out that form first, and then we ask them to register on the Texas Internship Challenge site. Once they register on the Internship Challenge site, they can see jobs that are in their area. Another way they learn about jobs, though, is from our secret weapon, Amy. So anytime our employers post positions on Texas Internship Challenge, we reach out directly to students who have already registered with us. So they kind of get a first notification that those positions are available. And we don't send all the positions to all the students in the state of Texas, but we send it to the ones who are registered with us in the areas of Texas where they're looking, in the type of work they're wanting to do. So when I mentioned earlier, we're able to be very strategic with that. It's really nice because students who are already familiar with us and have a relationship with us are getting emails with that information. The other thing we do, I say we, and by we I mean Amy, she does direct outreach to colleges and universities in these areas of study. So she's able to do some outreach to the career centers, but also like the business programs when we have accounting positions that are available. So when students apply, we let them know to take that letter of eligibility and give it to their employer. They get it as a PDF, so they have it for forever, but they can give it to their employer as well, and their transcripts. So those are the two things that employers can look at and absolutely know that students are eligible to participate in the program. And then 4 and 5, we depend on the students as interns. We depend on our employers as professionals to handle all of the interviewing and hosting those internships and everything like that. So we help with the vetting of students. We help with outreach in that regard. We don't interfere with interviewing, job placement, or anything like that. We are there to support. We are not there to interfere with the program. We provide a platform for a traditional internship cycle. Employers identify career readiness, competencies, and skills. That's the competencies and skills report we looked at earlier. Students intern, they perform functions, they kind of get their hands dirty in the industry that they want to work in. We know that they're mentored and evaluated and given lots of good support and learning those networking opportunities. And then, of course, interns are going to have those skills, those transferable skills in their pocket to move forward. This is just examples of some of the resources that we help with. Again, we don't sit down with students or employers later and go, give us 5 examples of how you mentored students. We trust that every experience is different and look to our employers as professionals. So this is what our application looks like. Again, that QR code goes straight to the application. It's pretty short and sweet. It takes probably 5 to 10 minutes to complete this application and lets employers know what's expected of them and gives us the information that we need to contact them and make sure that we work through the vendor documents together, the capacity plan together, and start that relationship so that we can get the agreements processed and support the internship positions that they have available. So questions, I know Vanessa or Amy may have some more to add too, but if there's any questions, we're more than happy to answer some of those.
Thank you, Lisa and Vanessa and Amy for sharing that information. Does anyone have any questions for our speaker? You can feel free to ask them out loud or in the chat.
I know often we get questions about what types of industries can participate with us. I really like the answer here because it's yes. Almost all industries are welcome to participate here. We appreciate them being, legitimate businesses in the state of Texas. Now, we actually have a couple of employers that are incorporated outside of the state of Texas, but they operate here legally. So they're set up with the Secretary of State and everything like that. So nationwide or global businesses are welcome to participate with us as well. Businesses can be huge, they can be tiny, so we can support for smaller mom and pop organizations as well as like mid and large size businesses too. And with that, a lot of people say, well, how many interns can I have? So and the answer there is it depends. So as long as no more than 50% of your workforce is made up of interns, you're good. So if you had 10 employees, you can have 5 interns. Lynette, I see your question. How many employers does TXWorks work with? Currently, we have 40 different employers on board with us. And then we have about, did I say the other day, 7 or 8 in the pike that should be active over the next couple of months.
And I think something just to add in addition, this program does create flexibility for the institutions in the case that although the agreements are not directly with the institutions, it's with the companies. It allows us to be able to manage with the companies the contracting and the vendor items in addition to time and effort and pay, which creates that space for institutions to continue implementing their internship curriculum with a little bit more ease. And continue those partnerships with the companies. So it is a different way of approaching things, but it's a way of easing the burdensome items and allowing everybody to do their part and contribute as a team.
Mm-hmm. Some of our more avid participants as employers have been nonprofit agencies. So we can support for-profit, nonprofit, organizations as well. We have some smaller nonprofit organizations, and then we have a state agency who participates with us, and another one about to come on board. We have a hospital coming on, so we're moving and shaking.
And I want to reiterate something awesome, at least on our end at Texas State, that y'all said is students who are enrolled in a credit-bearing internship or co-op course can do an internship through this program and also receive compensation. And so for a student and in terms of a competitive opportunity for, some students that have whatever skill set you're looking for, that's very compelling for them to receive both credit and compensation.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to, a school district, if they wanted to take advantage of our program, could take advantage of us while students are doing their student teaching there so that they can help compensate those students. I know those students, as a former teacher, those student teaching months were difficult time-wise. It would have been much easier on the pocketbook to have some compensation for that and develop loyalty too for the districts that are offering that. So I know Texas State is a leader in education and developing their educational programs for the state. So we're available for that.
Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, speakers, for this presentation. I believe all the contact information and links got put in the chat, which is super helpful. So please, I encourage y'all to reach out to Lisa, Vanessa, Amy, if you have any questions. They're really awesome to work with. I've reached out to them a lot over the last year. And so with that, we can transition our time into our final element of the symposium, which is our town hall discussion. And oh, okay, thank you. And I posed some broad questions, and we can certainly circle back to other questions or comments that others have. But we've had our three sessions in this series. We've had our speakers today who have reinforced many points that we've previously discussed and then brought up strategies, tools, concepts that I think we could all look at implementing to address our priorities. And so maybe I'll start us off with this really broad question, and this can bring out some more specific questions. But I posed to the group, and please jump in or chat in. What kind of workforce development projects or programs are of interest to you or your organization right now? And if you can think about an area or a concern or an area of priority for the clinical research workforce of Texas, what would that be? And so please, whoever wants to jump in or put in the chat, please just go for it. And hopefully we can echo each other's thoughts and provide insights or other ideas or collaborations. Okay, Debbie, I see your hand up. Thank you. Debbie, whenever you're ready, we can hear your questions or thoughts. Oh, thank you, Shelby.
Hi, I'm sorry, my mouse was stuck. Okay. All right. Well, I've been talking to Dr. Constance Johnson, who we had at University of Houston, about her clinical research program. And I know right now she has a contract with the University of Texas System. And so she's getting the word out there. It's a Clinical Translational Science Award for the clinical research program. So the NIH has sponsored Texas, I think about $30 million for 5 years to implement that project. And to inform the people that don't know about this, but the University of Texas has developed a clinical research program. And right now she's getting it out to the universities, but I like to see it go to the colleges too. And I think as a forerunner to that program, because it's a 28-week program, might be helpful if we developed a 1 hour or 3 hour kind of overview, whether it's for high school students or junior colleges, about clinical research as not a prerequisite, but just kind of a forerunner for that program. I think that would be helpful to get the word out. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, and I know Mr. Benson talked about it, early awareness is so critical. And so we really need the data, as you know, all the stats to sell why this is important. So that's why we need a slide with all this information that all our wonderful presenters have presented so we can get it out. Also, we got to think of different ways we can promote it in the high school, for example, besides using the Texas Education Agency, TEA, but also, like, for example, have someone present this little research program, which is 10 to 15 minutes, to SHAC committees, school health advisory councils, and start getting them involved, because SHAC recommends programs, curriculums to the school board. So that would be another place to start to get increased awareness in the high school.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything to add on to that comment? I think we've heard today several times that outreach and pipelines and entry to the workforce should be, at multiple levels, including those who hold a 2-year associate's degree, or a high school diploma or a GED. And so I don't know if anyone has thoughts about those, what was spoken about today. And, we heard Mr. Benson talk about what makes someone qualifiable for a role. So these are kind of themes that at least I've heard echoed. Does anyone have follow-ups to that? Okay. Any other, oh, yes, Lynette. Whenever you're ready, Lynette, you can go ahead.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Has anyone come up with a really good questionnaire that helps us predict who would be more likely to stay in the field once we've spent time training them? Did you hear the question?
Yes. So does
Okay.
anyone have a questionnaire or an assessment tool to kind of find correlations between who's in the workforce and how that relates to retention? Or honestly, in this moment and discussion, any anecdotes or past experience would also be informative.
Hey everyone, this is James with Actalent. Lynette, I appreciate you bringing up this question because if you took 100 students and you narrowed that candidate pool down, out of 100 people, who's going to be appropriate for clinical research, right? So if we narrow that list down to even 10%, that would even be interested. And then from there, who is going to, go through the 6 months to the year's worth of training to get up to speed to be a functional clinical research coordinator, regulatory data coordinator. So we've been working on this for the last couple of years because when companies come to us and want to hire an experienced clinical research coordinator, we have a proven track record. This person has previous references. It's quote unquote easier hire for a recruiting company like ours because there's that proven knowledge and desire to be in the clinical research workforce. So I would argue that the entry level talent is the hardest hire that our managers have to deal with due to not knowing, right? Is this person going to work out in 3 months, 6 months, a year? So we've been developing this for a Rising Tides program. We'd be happy to connect with everyone offline. But it's a fantastic question, Lynette, of we have all these resources, paid internships, all these things, but are we putting the right people in the seats to be able to make this work in a year from now, 3 years from now? So appreciate the question.
So, Carolyn, possibly having been in the field for 30 years and having met people that when you met them, you thought, you know what, I bet in 10 years they're still going to be here at the university. I always worked big universities. And other people you met and you're like, you know what, that person doesn't seem like the rest of us. Is that doesn't, and it had to do with kind of just their curiosity maybe about medicine or curiosity about how to make things better. It was almost what it was about. But that's really hard when you're interviewing. And so you're interviewing 20 people for a position. And you think that you've got the pay where it should be and everything. And people come in and, okay, you've got more experience, you have less experience, and they've got more education, less education. But it comes always down to those very curious folks who oh, do you know if you did this, you could do it a little bit better? Did you notice if you did this, it would work a little bit better? Those are the ones we were always trying to find, but I had never come across a questionnaire that you could actually give them at the beginning to say, I'd like to decide on these 3 candidates, which ones shall I hire? That would be helpful if people are trying to work on that topic. That would be kind of a nice thing, because even in high school, because having some college-age children, you know, a lot of the kids these days, they can go to college, but they're not always seeing, oh, you know, the jobs aren't instantly there. You have to have the certificate and you have to have the experience. So it's wonderful that they're doing the internships, and I think that's fabulous. But I think even in high school, a lot of kids are saying, well, what can I do to find out what I might really like to do, say in the life sciences? And as they're bringing up, if that was, as Rodney had brought up, if that was actually a topic that you could major in high school, hey, I'm going to go into life sciences, and these are my 15 choices. That would be really helpful to at least expose them to that. Maybe everyone who takes MCAT and doesn't get into medical school, maybe we should go after them, you know, because they're interested, but for some reason they didn't, and they didn't know where else they might go. I'm just throwing some questions out there.
Yeah, I think the high school question, um, Harry talked about this, and it's something I've explored. Having, whether it's teachers, the science teachers, or the future science teachers, or this future career and technical education educators, be able to get a better understanding of I'm just going to say STEM careers that are not, you know, engineer, doctor, nurse. The typical ones would, you know, it's hypothesized that would improve, you know, what's exposed to students in the high school setting. I see Rodney with his hand up, so he may have additional commentary on
Yeah,
this.
I'm just enjoying the conversation because I feel like I'm with my people. Because as I've said so many times, and Carolyn's heard this too, the medical lab science area is very much like this. You know, and I don't know if there's a great answer to that. I mean, I totally get that gut feeling you get with certain people that are curious, and always think about students. I put this in. I tell my own kids that are 25 and 28 now, Shark Tank material, like the ones that have the risk capacity, and they're willing to maybe go out into a different area to do these sorts of things where there's a blend of talent. I don't know if I'm making myself understandable here, but it's kind of a unique skill set along with what we know they need. Like they have to have these certain types of skills and knowledge, but they also sometimes have that other piece that you're kind of getting at, I think. And so for me, and what we're trying to do in the medical lab arena, which again is very much like this, is how do we get into, you know, junior high, high school, early college, associate degree kind of area, or early college, and get to the right channel to where they know about these paths. Because what we have found, and you made the, and there again, I have nothing against physicians and nurses. I have a daughter-in-law who's a nurse. But so many times a 16, 17, 18-year-old, I think, thinks they're going to go physician or nurse or veterinarian or whatever it's going to be, and they don't get there. And I think sometimes what they need to hear is earlier, like, there's these other pathways that you can literally save lives in. You don't have to always be an oncologist or a pediatric infectious disease expert. You can be a clinical research associate and work in clinical trials for drug, discovery and these other things. I don't know, that's where we're kind of focusing on looking down at the high school level. We're starting to attend professional organizations of counselors and high school teachers. There are big conferences and try to get tables
Oh.
in there and try to have talks and really pound this point home. And it's going to take time, I know, but I don't know how you get it down into that level because, I've done the guest speaker thing. There's only one Rodney. I try to hit every place I can find. And after 1 year, they kind of forget. You almost have to do it every year. Every new teacher, every turnover, every counselor, every student is different. And we've actually turned our own students into advocates as much as we can. So I don't know if there's a great answer to this, but I wish somebody would figure it out because I just feel like so many people end up with a college degree that's too general and they're bartenders, right? And that's okay if that's what they want to do, but I just feel like sometimes there's a loss in our workforce development, and I don't know.
I do want to highlight our first speaker. Michaela pointed out a component of her program is her promotores, the folks that are in the community raising awareness about the field of clinical research and possibly those careers. And so that might be something to follow up with her about just the impact that that's had. I think it's still in an earlier phase, but that's another possible avenue. As well. I also think I want to make sure I don't um, just have focus on, entry level as in people entering the workforce for the first time, and there may be folks reskilling from a different field
Right.
of work, and that's an area I know Harry's worked in with auto industry folks reskilling into biotech,
Right.
and I don't think he highlighted it, but the boot camp experiences, that's another possible avenue to, figure out who's going to stick with the profession. They get 3 weeks to, we just heard it from Lisa, eat, breathe, smell, feel the environment. And so I believe Harry mentioned he's seen that's a way to see who actually wants to do it after that. It's kind of a short-term period to filter out those that it just wasn't a good fit, and to see further.
And I think Lynette, was it you that said people who didn't pass the MCAT but took it might be a field to go into? Another one might be the like pre-med advisors in colleges for folks who aren't like getting that GPA or aren't getting the researcher experience or getting like to the terminal stages of their degrees. And they're like, I'm not going to go to medical school. That might be kind of the time to plug in some of these opportunities that we've heard from today.
Right. And can I follow up on that? And Carolyn, in the research triangle, their junior college there has a 2-year degree for clinical research. Go in, you come out, and it includes internship time. And I noticed that a neighboring one also had one where you just went in and you're getting a 2-year degree to become a monitor, essentially a clinical research associate. I'm not seeing those programs at junior colleges in Texas. When I tried to look at what was equivalent here in Texas, do we have any junior colleges here that are providing that?
I don't think at the 2-year level. I think our institution, our AMCs have programs, but I have not seen a 2-year program. I know the only biotech 2-year program is at ACC in Texas, and so that's shocking as well. But I think that this is also a conversation topic with academic programs evolve very, very slowly. At Texas State, it takes 2 years to add a course, just one course, let alone a whole program. And the industry and the job market evolves much faster, as we've heard. It's very dynamic. And so there's, I think, a sort of mismatch. And I think students find that very frustrating. They graduate with a degree and everything they learned in their degree, while is really amazing academic knowledge and valuable, it's not matching possibly the job market they're entering wherever they are regionally. And so I think, at least I work in this space where I hope to help with that mismatch and have programs and training programs, et cetera, to kind of fill that gap. but I think this is something we're going to see changing across the country with, credentials of value and those sorts of initiatives coming from our state and national governments. But no, I have not seen a 2-year program.
Okay. Since we do have the largest, I used to work in Houston, so I know we have the largest med center in the world, and Houston doesn't even have one, which I never quite understood. And UNT has one that's in Fort Worth. It's actually at master's level.
Yeah.
But I've been in ACRP meetings where the master's level prepared come with their brand new, CV. I'm all graduated, and we're like, but you're gonna have a really hard time getting a job now because you're overeducated for almost any group that would hire you without any, clinical experience. So when my daughter in college had some friends contemplating, I said, whatever you do, be sure you get a real full-time job before you finish your master's, because it really seems to be it makes it a lot more difficult, at least in some of the ones I've met.
Dr. Rohde, you made a comment.
Just, I think, again, to the point, we keep kind of talking about it, but I actually developed a talk a few years ago, and this was via kind of a collaboration through my community college experience and my role here at Texas State, where I discuss other healthcare and clinical research career paths. And so I purposefully avoid medical school and nursing school. I mean, I bring them up. It's kind of what we're talking about, and always give them the respect they deserve. But I talk about, the hundreds of people, if not thousands, that go through general biology, general chemistry, general other types of bioscience degrees who graduate, and sometimes even with master's degrees and maybe doctorates, and they're kind of lost in the career space of, what do I do with all this? I don't want to be a professor. I've learned really quickly I don't want to do that. And so what do I do? And it's like, well, have you thought about just going and picking up this credential, and finding a way into clinical trials or something? So again, people just don't know. And so somehow to get that information sooner is going to be really critical.
I also posed the second question just so we can have lots to talk about. This one's probably more immediate, and I think the group would like to know, what would you like to see happen as a result of this series? Whether it's as a member of the clinical research workforce or as a leader or an employer, academic program administrator, what outcomes are you hoping to have, and connections you want to make as we leave today? Because it has been super enjoyable learning more about everyone and their work. So please share with the group.
Well, I'll jump in first. I'm kind of belaboring my point, but please feel free to jump in here, because I think it's so important of our next steps. For me, as a chair of a medical lab science program who also understands the critical role of workforce development at the community college level. I've been doing this for 30 years in the community colleges, and there's amazing students there that I recruit to my program and try to get in the right channels. I would like to see, some type of way for academic programs, whatever that means, community college, my, 4-year colleges, whatever, find a way to synergize degrees and possible credentials. I would love a track for my professionals, my majors, to kind of pick up a minor, so to speak, or a credential as they're going through my program, so that if they don't, because some of my guys don't want to work in hospital labs after 2 years, they get burnt out 3 or 4 years later. And I always tell them, there are other routes with your credential. You might have to pick up a little extra effort in clinical trials or understanding what that's all about. But I wish I could be more purposeful, because sometimes I feel like I'm just telling them about it, and they're kind of like, well, what do I do? So I don't know if that makes sense, but almost a track from an academic standpoint that would get people, in that lane of understanding, and a credential perhaps.
Yes, so I see Lisa added the My Text Career tool also, which is a really good tool for anyone trying to figure out what career options in Texas are available based on their strengths and also the market. Um, and yes, thank you, Dr. Rohde. Um, Debbie, do you have a comment?
Well, I would say I agree with everything Dr. Brody
Yeah.
said. Excellent point. But again, that's a long-term goal that would take several years to go. So immediately for you, Dr. Chan, again, thank
Yeah.
you for putting all this together. Uh, we need to just spread the word and start talking about clinical research professionals and the need for it. So I think like those very first few slides that Denise had,
Yeah.
the billions of, looking forward in the next 10 years, we're going from 27 billion to 41 billion, and 60% of coordinators quit in the year 2022. And there's 10 jobs for every one coordinator. We need to sell why this is important and why people need to start looking into it. And like you say, it takes 2 years for a college or university to even have the program. So we really, and then we got to look at pharma too. I know Merck is developing the program right now, but who else can help us? And is there more federally funding out there for us to put a program on? I used to work for the University of Texas Medical Branch as a clinical educator for the Northeast Texas. So in the whole state of Texas, there were 6 of us for the whole state of Texas. So I had the Northeast region. Maybe we need funding for people that just go around to the different high schools or the different colleges and just introduces the dean or the research staff, the faculty about this topic and why there is a need, just to kind of just increase awareness and have people in different regions that kind of, because you can't do everything. I mean, it's just you and nobody can. So that if we had funding for that, and another thing I'd like to see after this conference is follow up what's actually been done and what your report, who are you sending this report to when you get done? Is it
The proceedings from all of these meetings?
no.
Yeah, we'll put it on the web page, and a lot of this is gathering information and partners so that we can apply to get grant money, or other sources of competitive funding to fund these initiatives, and to work with y'all, those of y'all who want to work with us, or if y'all find each other as well. And so to have a compelling application to get money, we need to have kind of the landscape and the market needs, etc. But we'll also put things on the website as well.
Well, that's great. I would be interested. I know other people on the call are interested in this. So if we could stay in touch every 3 months, 6 months or something, get an email, and maybe even if it's just a 30-minute Zoom, this is where we're at and this is where we're heading, and just get our input about it. Or, I mean, this is exciting to us. This is finally happening and needed to happen. So I would like to just not make this be the last call. I'd like to see it move forward. It would be exciting.
Great. Lynette, you have your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
Hi, I saw Denise was back on, and I wanted to ask, so Denise, in your experiences then at Duke, when because I know you guys are highly competitive. I mean, there's a lot of folks there trying to find the same people at Duke. So have you guys gone into the high schools to start saying, the little t-shirts, I'm going to go into life. Everyone in high school is now wearing their college that they're going to go to, whether they ever go there or not. But you start in your freshman. I was stunned. They start in their freshman year. So a little sweatshirt about I'm going to go into the life sciences, or what have you seen in the younger students?
We're starting to do some of that now. I would say that hasn't been a target area. I mean, it's certainly not something that we've had funding to do. And some of that limitation has been at the NIH level, right? So CTSA money that we had really couldn't be used for, anyone that was in high school and et cetera. So I think we're trying to do some of those things by, we have we have a clinic actually that is a research only clinic that actually has a very big community engagement focus. So we bring community partners in, they can use the space, that sort of thing, but we also use it as a research clinic, right? So we do research visits and those types of things there. And we've had a number of student programs where maybe a faculty member comes in and does a whole like Saturday workshop session, and they do a lot of hands-on activities to get the kids excited about research and different research topics. And we've done a few of those now, and they've been pretty well attended by the students. It's not something they have to do, and I think it's just part of a community partnership where we've invited, these groups, these high school groups or middle school groups even, to come in and do these activities. So we've done that. We've done some things. Right now, we actually have a huge grant from the Bloomberg Foundation. And I think there's a site in Texas, actually, that has the same thing. And it's essentially a high school training on the sort of like training towards these 4 different areas of discipline. At least for us, it's this high school. So it's this actual training program where they'll come in and they'll be learners, 9th grade, 10th grade, but then they can get on a track where they want to become a nurse. So they want to become a clinical research coordinator. They want to become, I think the other 2 jobs are surge tech and a farm tech. And so they've tried to build, so there are these big grant applications anyway for the Bloomberg that allow for this high school, kind of training, pre-college. Some of them can come out with an associate's degree. After a year out of their high school, they do some additional interning related to the discipline that they've chosen. But the fact that so what brings me back to that very long answer is that it's clinical research folks who are working in the trenches, getting the word out, that actually put this on the radar of Duke Health, which is like the hospital recognized that clinical research actually has a very large gap in terms of employment and potential, right, for a whole workforce. So included us in that grant. Otherwise, those are 3 different areas of clinical that they were trying to tackle, and research was just the 4th one that they decided to pull us in, and we worked on the grant with them. So anyway, that's just some ideas.
Thank you.
Shelby, I think you have a question.
Yes, I actually wanted to ask James. He in his when we first got on the call this morning, said he was him and his company was developing a program called Rising Tides, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that, if possible.
Yeah, definitely. So we work with just over 50 different academic research institutions, including Duke University and others across the country. And so a lot of times it feels almost like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul if we're moving coordinators around, if people are relocating, want to switch maybe disease groups, so on and so forth. So we really want to address the underlying issue, which is there's not enough people going into clinical research. So how can we, with our 150 clinical research recruiters that are making 40, 50 phone calls every single day to potential candidates, it's a pretty big lift to get the next generation of clinical research talent infused into our academic partners. So we're in the process of working with a few different educational partners and academic research institutions that have a cohort size in mind to bring on, let's say, like 5 entry-level clinical research coordinators, train them on the job training, and really get them to that point of being the lead study coordinator, and be fully autonomous on a clinical research study or on a treatment study, right? Because that's the most challenging piece is it's taking 6 months to a year to train that staff member up to be able to perform that work autonomously without supervision. So that's a cliff notes, and hopefully I didn't ramble too much, but we're excited about this. It's definitely something that as an organization, we have the national reach, global reach to put that next generation of talent into the academic and site partners that we've worked with, and also with DE&I in mind, like we're supporting communities that we have to be mindful of that as we educate the future generation. So definitely exciting time to be part of it. And if anyone wants to hear a little bit more, happy to talk offline.
Thank you, James. I know someone asked me this question earlier. Would y'all be receptive to completing any surveys about kind of the scope of workers and the knowledge, skills, abilities that they need for us to use, to help us develop, training training program proposals and so on. Would y'all be receptive to receiving any surveys related to any of our sessions?
Certainly. I'd be happy.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, I just wanted to mention what Denise said. I did something similar about 15, 20 years ago. Tyler had a program for young girls for health sciences, 6th through 8th grade. And we had veterinarians there and laboratory people, different science. Anyway, I did one on clinical research, gummy bears versus jelly beans, research in action. And we had an informed consent form. Dr. Candy was the PI, and we had to randomize which candy they would taste first, the jelly bean or the gummy bear, to see which one tasted better. But it was really a lot of fun, and it got them. And then we had different teams, and they came up and scored, which one was better. And we talked about variables, and they were all excited about research. I gave a little PowerPoint about a difference between basic research and clinical research, and used the terminology of research coordinator and a PI and pharma and careers you could have in clinical research. But a lot of them left there just all excited, wanting to be involved in clinical research. So Annette, hi Annette. So she was asking about people that have that would be good for that career. Anybody that, like sciences, I mean, if we can catch them at an early age to recognize that they do like the life sciences, that would be the earlier the better, even 6th grade. We didn't even talk about 6th grade, but that's the girls were 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and they were very excited. So we mentioned a lot about high school, but middle school, even we can introduce it then.
Yeah, and I do think, at our academic institutions, particularly those with colleges of education, folks do have grant programs related to workforce development in the K through 12 setting. And so I think on my end, or anyone who else is at one of those institutions, making sure those folks, if they're looking for workforce development opportunities for that audience, can advocate for them reaching out to the clinical research professional community for those instances. That's definitely a step we can take. Okay. Any lingering comments? Okay, well, I will wrap us up. I'm so appreciative of everybody taking time out of their day today to come and hear from our amazing guest speakers, to participate in Q&As and chat and our final discussion. In addition to our sessions throughout the summer, I have found everyone's insights really valuable, and I think we've made some great connections with one another and cross networks and spaces, having academic, industry, healthcare partners all together. And so thank you to the Translational Health Research Center and their staff, particularly Shelby, for making everything happen happen, but also happen so smoothly and seamlessly. I appreciate all your hard work. And thank you all for attending today. We will likely be sending a follow-up email with information on how to access session materials, as well as a final survey, and any of the information we shared. So please look out for that. If you have any questions or want to get in touch again, please feel free to contact myself or the Translational Health Research Center. I believe all the contact information is on the webpage for the program.
And I'm going to grab you real quick before you hop off. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for your kind words. It's been so amazing putting on this program for all y'all and meeting you all. I know there's just a few more of us on here, but I'm going to put you on the spot. If you can take off your, or turn on your camera, and if you're comfortable, I would love to grab like a quick group photo of everyone here. Let me give you just like a minute and a half-ish to find the video icon and click it and fix your hair and make sure you don't have anything in your teeth. And I'll give you a countdown and smile. And I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your afternoon. And thank you so much for being here. If you've been here since this morning, you're a rock star and I appreciate you. So yeah, let me give just a few more seconds. I wonder if Melinda might turn on her camera, but if not, that's okay. Okay. All right. Ready, everyone? Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Thank you all so much. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Carolyn, if you have anything else to say, take it away.
I have nothing else. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. And hope if for some of y'all, first week of school for public schools and next week for the college students.